while we wait for Karen. Karen is coming, right? Yeah.
Also, tonight, we're introducing new finance.
Oh, okay, great, great. I thank all the department heads for coming. We found that because you present some of your information so early in the season, by the time we get down to the nitty-gritty, we have lost some of the detail. And so thank you for coming. I don't know if I need to wait for Karen to come to ask these next questions, or Andrew, do you have something that you want to get started with?
Yeah, I don't have anything to add. I guess one thing was, Karen's going to read the one article. The one article. There was one article, Chris is here to talk about it, that is not on the sheet, but we really were looking for input as far as this is something that we want to try to move forward with the next year. We want to take this with the fire on the pool. We want to be able to raise some money for our pool, for our costs, start raising up for that, or do we want to try to put them on?
Okay, that sounds, we all need them, yeah. Thank you. Sorry, we usually have Karen here to kind of help us through some of the final details on the operating budget. Do you want to say this?
So, but if you want, I mean,
All right, well, one of the things is I go through and look at year-to-date for 2020 and look at what was proposed for 2020 and then what is proposed for 2021. And it's just, there isn't any, I'm just trying to understand it, so I don't have any major brief here, but I just wanted to understand it. So, on the police department call, are we fully staffed? Were we fully staffed up until, I have an operating budget that it's up to date to 12/15. So I could understand that maybe you weren't fully staffed at the time, and maybe that's why. But I went down and I looked at the year-to-date versus 2020 versus 2021. And one of the areas,
To answer your question, we're not fully staffed.
what's that?
We're not fully staffed.
You're not fully staffed.
No.
Okay. But well, I got the old one because I marked it, but it was under the police department, and it was line 41, equipment purchase field. And it has year-to-date 12,000. It has 2020 approved was 13, and then proposed for 2021 is 31,000.
I gotta find the line, stand by. I don't know how this is.
40, yeah, it's on, yeah.
On page 16.
Page 16.
Yes. Of the new one. Oh, you read the new one?
No, it's just stapled together, but I'll figure it out.
Lower right-hand corner has the numbers.
Yeah, maybe I better check and see it wasn't changed since 12/15. Sorry about that. And it's the category equipment purchase field. And that would be 41, line 41. Got it? And I just seem to always look at big, variances in that. And just-
Right.
So I know that year-to-date 22 on the front, and the requested is 31,000.
So the difference is, difference and or new stuff is that media service storage, increase in taser, and then new UTV doors, level 4 ballistic vests, weapons and modification, and outdoor camping.
But I think you're asking have those expenditures been made?
Have the expenditures been made, and it's the new, and so we have just done the 13 or the 12,000 this year, but it's the increased replenish, the need for extra drive space for video, it's all of that increase.
Absolutely.
Replace body cameras, 9,000, that's kind of new for this year, so that's the main expense on that.
That's correct.
Okay. And then the other one, what?
Do you have any questions concerning the proposal?
Well, go ahead if you want to.
No, I just didn't know if
Do
there's
any of you have
specific.
any questions on those? I just look at the big variances and try to see.
So that was one of the areas that we did have, so if, we just had some additional equipment we needed to purchase this year. Each has a specific, item. For example, level 4 ballistic vest. Each officer is going to be used to level 4 ballistic vest, to carry with them while they're on patrol. It actually, protects them from rifle rounds, where these vests don't. And I think it's kind of timely based on what happened on the 23rd. Our UTV doors that we have currently are winter doors. These will be summer doors. It's a little bit hot there in the summer, in 90-degree weather. And they even when the windows down, they're short windows. The weapons modifications, we're currently upgrading our weapons systems. It's part of our weapons modification system. And the outdoor camera, probably more, it's also a microphone, which is actually more expensive. We elected to put another camera in front of the police department, as well as a microphone. We have a lot of custody exchanges that occur in front of the police department, where there are verbal disputes that occur that we have to take to court, and we need that evidence. And we found that one that we have recently, it only showed one side, and we couldn't hear what they were saying. It was just video.
So are these one-time purchases then?
Yes.
Okay.
The only thing that wouldn't be is the ongoing 9,000 that we constantly are upgrading our body cameras wear out at between 3 and 5 years.
And then the other one was line 35, gasoline.
Yes.
And we have 10,000 year to date, almost at the end of, well, let me check and see what 2022 or 1222 says. It may have changed. So it was 34, 35. We're still, so is there a big difference? What's the difference on that? Hi, Karen. We'll be right here in just a minute.
By the time we get our billing approved for the gasoline for the vehicle, it will probably be about $2,500. Because we're always a few months behind the billing process. But because the fuel prices went down and stayed low this year, we'll probably have a little bit of surplus there. But we have to budget for where the average will be. And we're going to be pretty consistent. I know one year we thought we would go exactly as the year prior, and the price of fuel went up, and when you're back, the deficit went up. So we'll probably, we could have a small surplus in that one.
All right.
Not next year, because I don't know, the prices start to go back up.
I always have to ask these little.
That's fine, but that's not how it's behind.
Okay, all right.
You have a question?
Chief, do you ever get any, like, discounts or?
We do. So the town, most municipal vehicles use state pumps. They use the state pump, and That's a locked-in price that they establish in June of each year. I actually use a system called Lex, the same system the sheriff's department uses, and it fluctuates. So if the cost of the fuel goes below what the state bid price is, you end up losing money. So Lex is always, the system's around 30 cents less than what you see at the cost. And unless it's cheaper at state pumps, we're always monitoring, we'll go back and forth. So and that's what the sheriff's department does too. So it's a credit card that we use, and we go to municipal, private pumps, and we monitor the prices around town, go to the cheapest gas, 30 cents less than that, unless the state locked-in price is less than what we're paying at the pumps.
All right. So those are the two big areas right here, the year-to-date and just moving forward. So thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah. Any other questions for the chief?
There were great questions, but if you have any other questions to ask, and it comes up after the fact, give me a call or stop by, or I'll go by wherever you're at. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Mr. Chairman, do anybody take a minute for whatever the chief explained it to you people?
Pardon?
Do you anybody take a minute for everything that the chief talked with you about? A minute?
We do use that.
You're in front of the,
No, the camera, it's not minutes. Don't tell me the law about
We will use
minutes.
those as minutes. We used to
I want-
have someone for minutes.
I want minutes after we finish the meeting.
Yeah, you'll get them.
5 years, 5 days.
And I think the other one, the other area is welfare area, since, and that's on page,
26.
26. So, and that's in the new one, right, John? 'Cause I'm going
Yes.
back and forth on the old one and the new one. So on welfare, we have 110 proposed, and year-to-date is 178. And we're not finished with this year yet. And I don't know, I would like to hear from the budget committee because I do believe that should be increased in the proposed.
Can't overspend and then
Ask
ask for additional funds.
for a special public hearing and ask CRA authorization to overspend. We do have to show where those monies are going to come from, additional money. We've only done it once in 19 years. We've only had to ask permission to overspend in 19 years I've been here. And at that time, we had used some fund balance to cover the expenditures.
I know that can happen. I just would feel more comfortable if somehow that was taken care of ahead of time with something. And maybe another 25 to 50,000 in there for this year. Because I do believe that the select board has the authority to move money from line item to line item. So if you come at the end of the year and do not have the need to spend that much money, you can use that money someplace else. Or you can actually pull it from someplace else and put it in there when you need it. But I'm just bringing it to your attention now because I do think that this is an unusual year and I think it's going to continue until at least summer. Yeah. So, I don't want to be caught short in a whole budget. I understand you can move from line item to line item. we've already hit 175,000, and we only have 110 budgeted for next year. So I don't know if any of you agree with me or don't agree with me, but I just think that that's one area that we really need to take a look at.
I partially agree with you. I can see the 25 to 50,000. The town is a bottom line budget, so other areas that there are savings can be used to cover the expenditures, over expenditures in this area. We do have to monitor each department carefully if that happens. It is correct that the selectmen can transfer from one fund to another, one budget to another, except where they can't transfer from the sewer back to the general fund or the sewer to somewhere else, but anything within the general fund. Where it's a bottom line budget, very seldom have we used that transfer mechanism, because if you use it, it gets very hard to define what's the default next year. Is it that adjusted budget, or is it the one that was originally approved by the taxpayers? So there is questions on it. So that transfer, in the history I've been here, we've done it twice. It's always been bottom line. We have had to tell, the town managers had to in the past say, we're freezing these budgets, you know, no new hiring, freezing the expenditures in this particular line, and those items were used somewhere else. So there's a couple different options there. I don't believe 300,000 is an answer.
I don't either, but I also think that to make sure that there is somewhat adequate funds, that it needs to be defined at the beginning, just so you don't overspend someplace else and then you can't transfer it into that line item. So I'm only one person. I don't know if anyone else on the budget committee thinks that we should ask you to, come up with a plan to maybe augment that for this coming year.
Would you feel better at like 150,000?
Yeah, I would, definitely. Because I think this year we started with March through December with COVID, and I'm hoping that it will be just January through June this coming year, with different things happening, but I would feel better.
There's with this new government, of course, it has to say that, but the moratorium on evictions, I think is going to be extended. And I don't know what else could affect us as far as the welfare.
Well, what the federal government is hopefully doing will help, and then what the state is doing will also help. So I'm thinking 150 would be better in there than just 110. That's just me, I just want to take care of that.
So how much do we spend October through December of this?
I would have to go back and look.
But just the price.
Probably 100,000.
Because that's when COVID was really taking a grip of everything. So
We started expending extra monies in March
yeah.
from some of the places being closed and not operating like we have rehabilitation centers and some of the special housing for addiction rehab housing had closed, and some of your community housing for the homeless had closed. So we started having to deal with some of that fallout back in March. And we were reimbursed a considerable amount through a grant, but it still didn't cover everything. Had we not received that money, I think we would have been closer to the 300,000, but because we had received some of those funds, I think it helped absorb some of those expenditures. Yes, I do know there's more expenditures coming because I talked with Seal about what she has out there. She's got quite a few vouchers out there right now.
Steve?
In the federal programs, where you know the rental side of the business, so if somebody is unable to pay their rent, I mean, and they're going to the town for assistance, but is there any option for the landlord to apply for funds to replace, you know, like the payroll protection money, or does the landlord have any source of funds through the various government programs, or is that?
You know, with this new program, it could be, but I know in the old one.
But not in the one from, not the one from 2020, possibly in 2021.
No, the triple P money basically took care of the payroll and with the people that were in the different departments, even in the rentals, but not the rental itself, as far as making up the difference of lost rent.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, so the PPP obviously gave them their wages to pay the rent in theory, or along with other
Right.
expenses,
Mhm.
but there was no direct payment to the landlord, and we don't think there is in this new.
No, and they're just saying right now, 1 month, an extended 1 month moratorium, but I don't know.
Is that state by state now, or are they beginning to say state by state?
Could be.
Yeah.
I agree, it could be. You know, the other thing too, with the welfare, it's not just, as Karen said, the vouchers, people needing a place to live. Now, some of these people that were getting into hotels, they're destructive. So now they're coming in with a motel owners are saying, hey, we put these people in here, they've destroyed their rooms. Now we want to be reimbursed for the rooms. So, you know, that takes on a whole other animal for us, which is above and beyond just the base level.
We're responsible.
And that takes you into the insurance, property liability insurance, where we have to pay the first $1,000 deductible on any claim that we put in. So
Have we had claims on it?
I'm not
There were
charged.
two yesterday. Yeah.
I don't do property liability claims anymore, so I can't answer that.
It's still going to be something about before your rates can be adjusted.
Yeah, crazy. Well, anyways, does anyone else have any comments on the welfare?
It sounds like from this discussion that we definitely, when we talk about, we need to increase that somewhat, $150,000 at least because of the mushrooming expenses.
And you just want to check that area too, and ask Tom.
It makes sense, as we go through this, we keep track of those and keep a bucket list on them, and then see what the whole amount that we're requesting, either up or down or sideways, comes to, and then decide what to do.
You'll be in the operating, proposed
Yeah.
operating budget.
Yeah.
In the warrant articles too?
Yeah.
Well, I basically had that for the public, or for the police department, and a little bit on the public works. So I have to go back and forth between what I marked up and the new one. So, just the public works, I didn't have a chance to go through it, but I was just looking at the bottom line of year-to-date, $857,000, and that's line 34 in the public works, and that's probably page 24. And so 857,000 year-to-date, 20 approved was 1,188,000, and then we're asking 1,002,000 for 2021. And I know this doesn't reflect everything that is coming our way, but are most of the bills in, or?
We do have some bigger bills that are coming in for salt and sand, so we will be seeing them. One thing about the public works, budget, the highway department budget. We held off on hiring a couple individuals in order to save money because of the COVID. We also did not hire the summer part-time person, seasonal person to help out. So we held off on those 3 items. Their overtime wasn't too bad this year, and so they were lucky. We can't predict what the winter storms are going to bring. So not only do we save on wages when we hadn't hired those individuals, we also save on the benefits as well. So health insurance, life insurance, disability insurance, retirement, all get saved.
I just like to ask those questions.
Yeah.
I want you to know I'm reading this. All right, are there any other questions on any of the departments in the operating budget? Otherwise, we'll move to the warrant articles.
The questions, Diane, that sent out on the state retirement and the question of the street sweeper and
Yeah, the street sweeper and that was in the warrant articles, correct?
okay.
So, just move to that.
I did bring updated. So before we get started, I'm not sure if you want to introduce our new employee.
Yes. I wrote it down phonetically, sure. Say, Lori Boas. She comes to us from Harvard, Mass. And we're really excited to have her. She's got big shoes as well as Karen, and we're going to Karen quite a bit.
Welcome, Gloria. And since we're doing that.
And do you mind to speak up? She's the new,
This is the new finance director.
she takes
Takes care of
care
this
of
position.
Okay, thank you.
Lori, how do you spell your last name?
Let's spell it.
Yes.
B as in boy, O-L-A, S as in Sam, E-V-I-C-H. Velocity.
Okay, thanks.
And just because we're introducing you, we have to also say thank you to Karen.
Thank you very much.
And I will put it to the side.
I love flowers. They are beautiful. Thank you.
I'll give you this to take home.
I do my job. This is all part of my job, I feel. I'm not perfect at it, but I will give you at least 100% if I can. I've had some family things happening between spring this year and recently. So I'm not as up to date as my mind isn't as focused as what it's been in the past. Recently, my sister's diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. So December's been pretty rough. And I know I'm doing the right thing by what I need to do because I can't give everything that Littleton needs. I'm willing to help out what I can, be there for advice, be there for a phone call, but my focus will be, again, my first and foremost is my family. Second will be my new job. And I guess third will have to be Littleton.
We just want to know, we want a report from your husband, who has had too many dinners by himself. What it's like to have dinner with his wife again. So. But we thank you very much for all that you've done for us.
Thank you.
You've certainly gotten us through a lot of budget seasons, right, Steve? So.
And we certainly appreciate your openness and your honesty and your willingness to be forthcoming on details as best you have. Like you say, you haven't always been spot on, but damn close. And sometimes that's a lot more than what you get from a lot of other people. So we certainly appreciate that.
She hasn't said anything back, has she?
She's been learning a lot today. That's the first day.
So I'll have those out, Karen, as you get started.
This is the number one most recent I did not find it. Seal found where I was picking up an old formula from last year's assessment, not 2020's assessment. So when we put that in and I built the spreadsheet to pick up that formula, it dropped our estimated total town tax for 2021. We also, Andrew and I sat down and talked with some of the department heads and got a little bit better idea on some of the warrant articles that we want to bring forward. And some were adjusted. So the blue lines at the top are the non-monetary lines. They're zoning ordinances, RSA 79E, which Andrew can speak further about, and the election of officers. So they're not really something unless I believe the Board of Selectmen and Budget Committee will want to weigh in on the zoning ordinances at some time in the RSA 79E. But they don't have any tax impact as of right now. Bond warrant article, I have that on here as a question mark in case we end up before public hearing deciding to move something to a bond. If we don't, that will come out of here. So we've got the 2021 default budget, which is the same as the last time we were here. $10,293,591, with offsetting revenues of $8,113,139. Our adjusted request from the taxpayers will be $2,180,452, an estimated impact of $2.91.5. We have our proposed operating budget, which currently is at $10,622,598. Offsetting funds, revenues, $8,341,565. Tax impact is estimated to be $2,281,33. That is without the 50,000, 25 to 50,000 that you're talking about, and I didn't catch all of the police department, but I will catch up with that. So the estimated tax impact is $3.04, almost 5 cents per thousand. The difference is 14 cents. If you look at your second page, you'll see that. Now, for all of the rest of the warrant articles that we started talking about, I'm not sure if you want to start with the parking meter fund and the operating budget, or do you want to move directly down to, at this point, Article 11, which is the Public Works lease purchase, the sweeper, and no 10-wheeler, and a truck. And I know that you talked about this the last meeting. We talked about not having a 10-wheeler, and there was discussion that you wanted from the mechanic before you made a decision on this.
Where do you all want to go? Do you want to go right to that one first? Yeah, might as well. Yeah, go with that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I'm not sure if Doug is here, and I know the mechanic's here, Bruce, and is Bill here too? Okay.
Steve, do you want to read the questions to them that we have got? Because you have a pen.
I do have a handout here. This is an updated vehicle plan that I presented to you guys last year. And I went ahead and changed it to reflect the adjustment in the 10-wheeler, trying to keep the plan current with the way the direction's going. So I did an updated plan.
Okay. Go ahead, Steve.
Well, the question having to do with the street sweeper that we discussed quite a bit the last time. And basically, the main point was we wonder if the town would be better off contracting the sweeping services in the spring rather than to buy an expensive piece of equipment that is only a small, limited window of use.
Alright. Well, our sweeper is actually a highly valued piece of our fleet. Our current sweeper is 18 years old, and it went through a major refurbishing about in the middle of its life. It is limited in the sense that we don't use it during the winter, but for the other 7 months of the year we do. Typically we sweep in the spring, we sweep in the fall, and then we do continual sweepings, particularly in Main Street and the whole river district on a monthly basis, if not sooner than that, just to keep it more clean. So it is a pretty heavily used piece of equipment. We also use it for cleaning our catch basins around town as a vacuum sweeper, so it also has the function of like a shop vac, the hose, and we go around and we clean our catch basins to prepare them for winter and storms and keep them cleaned out. So it is a pretty good used piece of equipment for our department. We did sit down and speak with Avery, and they're the main company that does sweeping services in New Hampshire. They sat down with us and kind of went over their numbers of what they would do under kind of a contract arrangement. And they give us pricing for, and they basically charge by the hour for sweeping or catch basin cleaning. And so they kind of estimated what it would cost to do those same kind of services for us, kind of at the same level that we're doing. And it was probably in the range of $50,000 to $60,000 a year. So we kind of looked at that, and I don't think it's a good choice to consider, given that cost. We're looking at a sweeper that's about $260,000 to $75,000 to purchase for a piece of equipment that the current equipment lasted 18 years. And so it seems like a good investment to purchase rather than try to do a contract.
And
I have Bruce here to talk about that. I have some bills.
With Avery also, you gotta understand that they've got 13 other towns in the area that they deal with, in 3 districts of the state of New Hampshire. So us coming in, we're gonna be at the bottom of the list.
Yeah.
The sweeping in the springtime, the minute this last snowflake melts, that phone's ringing off the hook. When's my road gonna get swept? When's my street gonna get swept? And one of the more high-value areas in town, around Partridge Lake, needs that immediate attention whenever we're able to get out there. Avery charges for sweeping $175 an hour. And catch basin cleaning, we've got over 600 catch basins. They're charging $190 an hour. We averaged about what it would take. We're still going to have to supply the labor to help, because they're just going to drive their truck. That's all. They're supplying a guy driving, and if they're out sweeping, we've got to supply a dump truck and a driver. So the labor's out there already.
So if I just run the rough numbers of $50,000 a year, and our sweeper lasted 18 years, would I be right to say over the 18-year period, the same piece of equipment would cost us $900,000 in equivalent of renting it? Even if we reduced our expectations by half and said we're only going to do $25,000, we're still looking at $450,000 for the same piece of equipment over an 18-year period.
Yeah, that sounds right.
And the other thing, we've had a sweeper in this town since 1962. Now, I'm not saying we need one now. Yes, I am saying we still need one. We need that immediate service here in town. We need it. We need to keep Main Street swept. We've got to keep all the arteries coming into town swept. The state will go through Union Street, Meadow Street, and West Main Street once. They do that for every town in District 1, so that's from Plymouth north. And they'll give us one service, and that's it. And they're not doing Main Street, because they only own to the white lines on Main Street. Anything from the curbs, from the white line to the curbs, is owned by this town of Littleton. And to the train guy, with 22 years worth of experience, when you start walking down Main Street, and you're looking at these curb lines, and they're filthy. Cigarette butts, bottles. You know, when the sweeper was at its peak, we were sweeping probably once every 2 weeks on Main Street because it needed it. The condition of the sweeper now is at a point where if we can squeeze it out once a month, but you'll notice it. When we do it that once a month, it needs it. It needs it bad. 2013, there was a warrant article that was presented to the town, and it got voted favorably to refurbish the sweeper we had. We put $35,000 into it to refurbish it. Since then, we probably put another 10 to 15 into it. And now at this point, if you guys said you guys you just have to make it work one more year. All I'm saying is if it stopped working and it was a high value fix, no way. Because they're not even going to give us anything for a trade. 3 years ago in 2018, two companies, CN Wood at Mass and Viking Survey, which are two big companies, one was going to give us $12,000 and one was going to give us $12,500. So they were right there of what it was worth 3 years ago. And I talked with my rep from Viking today, and he goes, Bill, I don't even know if I can give you anything for what you did. We literally robbed Peter to pay Paul on that machine because it has dual sides for sweeping, okay? And there is an option to just get the right side. But we took everything from the left side to repair the right side. You know, to save money. We used an old impeller, which creates the whirlwind, the vacuum. We had up back because the new one was close to $10,000. He said, well, we'll use our old used one again. Because it was in better condition than the one that was in. Seriously, the machine, we use it for sweeping. It's there in case of storms. We have storm damage and we need to sweep up debris. We use it for vacuum excavation if we're around sensitive areas. We just recently did it behind the bank, putting in the bollards for the charging station because they had all that underground electricity in there. We dug the holes for this week. And we had, as I say, catch basin cleaning, and it's there. It's ready for us to go. We don't have to call and say, okay, well, we'll be there in 2 weeks. If we need it, it's there. It is a very important piece of equipment. When we went and got that in 2002, we had just a sweeper that's all it did was sweep. And when we graduated to this one, it was like, this was a no-brainer. This is what the town needs. I mean, we're saving money. Really. And to make it last as long as we have, even the reps, when they came up and took a look at it 3 years ago, they were like, you guys are taking a good care of this for it to last this long. Because the life expectancy for a sweeper, 10 to 12 years. And then they're usually traded out. And, they're traded out, and I don't know where old sweepers go, because I'd never buy one. I'd never buy a used one. We found that out when we were looking for 10-wheelers and replacement trucks. Everything we looked at that was secondhand, that was a municipal-owned piece of equipment, they just got left. They really is. I guess I've run my mouth enough.
Bill, you have a question?
Bill, you have a question?
Yes, sir, Steve.
Yeah, just
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
I'll just so you're not wondering, I made the motion to take a look at that. So it's not necessarily that I'm against it, but I'm really glad to hear the explanation. And just how much you are using it, more than I had recognized.
Yeah, it's a 7-month thing. And in the wintertime, It's not taking up any space, that was another question I think that was on here.
Yeah.
We winterize it just like we would your motorhome or your RV. We winterize it, park it up back out of the way, and it's out of the garage.
I'll be
Sleep
honest.
for the winter.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I like your explanation. I like your passion. And I like the fact that you really care about the town and keep it clean like that. On the other hand, I'll always ask the question because a piece of equipment that doesn't get used but maybe half a year is still pretty expensive when you think about it. So I'm always going to push that way, just so you know.
Yes, sir.
But I do appreciate your answer, and I think I'll probably support you.
As I say, there's a lot of talk on some high dollar items coming up. And Doug and I and Bruce have talked. And if you guys if you came to us and said, it's either fire or highway, you know, we're willing to, I don't want to commit to it, but we're willing to step back. Because again, 16 years on this department that I spent before Chad and the new chief got there, I know what that equipment's in, not in.
You do have to admit that as you're talking about new equipment, it's a good time just to evaluate, make or buy in the first place, make or contract there. It's a really good time to evaluate that.
Yeah. Avery is downsized too. It's Dave and his father, they're out of Lincoln. And it's just him and his father now, because he can't find work. He's downsized to 2 sweepers and a vacuum truck. And he used to have a whole fleet of sweepers, but he doesn't anymore. He can't find work. He said, I want to go and travel and work. You know, it's overnight stuff. You know, you can't get a town done in a day. There's just no way. We got 64 miles of road. There's no way we're going to get that done. It's going to take a week or more. And that's depending on the weather.
What's the expense of these things a year on brushes, on filters, on tires, and all of that?
Well, tires, I mean, that would be nothing. But brooms, you got a brooms and you set of brooms, you're probably $2,000.
Okay.
Probably you get it all out there and have some spares. Yeah. The other thing is, when we got this sweeper, we didn't have the ability to sweep with our backhoe and our loader. And now we do. So theoretically, the next sweeper that comes here could last even longer than what this would, because we're able to go out into the country with the backhoe, because there's a sweeper that goes on the front of that has a hopper, and you can dump into a truck. So we can get out there with that and get the sweeping done even quicker. We've acquired a larger broom that was bought a number of years ago that we have, which is brand new. Bruce is going to adapt that so it goes onto the loader. So, you know, when it comes to sweeping up storm damage and everything else like that, you know, the country roads, you know, we try to keep that sweeper for what it's made for, which is in-town sweeping. It's not made to go out into the country and it's just, you know, dirt stuff. The amount of sweepings we do in a springtime after winter, in town and out of town, probably fill up half this room. Not to see them, but volume-wise up to the balcony, but at least half this room. That's how much it's sweet.
Thanks.
So on this warrant article, the public wants, is it just for the sweeper?
Actually, it's for the truck, and Doug has communicated with me, which I haven't had a chance to talk to Andrew. I don't like to throw things out there, but I'm going to. During all of the FEMA process of getting broomstick done and all of the 2017 projects done, we have about $30,000 left that they reimbursed us for because we can charge for equipment. So that kind of helps out, we hope, and we hope that the budget committee would support some of, this is a couple of suggestions. One, if we break the warrant article to 2 warrant articles, one is the 1-ton pickup, which is the replacement for the, I would call it the emergency call-out vehicle. This truck would be set up as a roadside mechanic repair vehicle, a sewer maintenance vehicle, and an on-call emergency response vehicle. It's the orange truck that we've had for a very long time. I think it was bought when George Chartier was here. The suggestion is to have a warrant article to purchase that, but 1/3 of it coming from the sewer funds, because that truck can be used and has been used for going out for sewer maintenance. 1/3 of the cost to be coming from the FEMA funds that are left over, and 1/3 of the cost from a tax impact. So it would be bought all at once, 1 year, rough estimate being $87,000, because this truck would be set up with a standard truck bed and with a utility bed, and I thought a plow on it.
Yeah, they'd also be able to apply sand and plow, or salt and plow.
So it would be used for several different things and less impact to the taxpayers to get this truck. The other thing is the sweeper could be put on a warrant article similar to this. It could be done as a lease purchase, 3 years, or a loan for 3 years. The cost of the sweeper is $276,000. If I'm correct, that's what the estimate was. And that's a stock unit that is available, and it has a discount on it.
We might get less than that, Karen.
And it was passed over when New Hampshire DOT was purchasing their vehicles. Just a rough estimate of the 1-ton truck impact would be between $29,000 and $30,000 to the taxpayers for that, and that's buying that.
That's one time.
One time, no continual payments on it. Rough estimate on the sweeper, if it's purchased, and this is at the cost that I've got, is roughly $97,000 to $98,000 a year. In the warrant article at this time, I've calculated $115,000. So there would be a reduction on that warrant article, and it would be, you'd have 2 warrant articles, one to purchase the 1-ton truck and one to purchase the sweeper.
Would that require an annual approval by?
If we do a lease purchase with a non-appropriation clause, yes, it would. Have to have it.
Non-appropriation clause. But if you don't use a non-appropriation clause, it takes the supermajority to pass.
So we have to have 66%.
6%.
Yeah, we,
Same.
Yes,
Okay, so 60%.
60%.
yeah. Oh, we were talking about the non-appropriation clause, or having to go back to the voter each year to approve, because it was a lease purchase, okay? For instance, let's see, was it, where is it? Number 13? Oh, no, 12.
12.
The ambulance, 5 years. So 5 years, we have to get approval from the voters. And I guess my whole hope at one time at the beginning of the budget season, and a lot of hopes get dashed right away, but my hope was that we could focus on a piece of equipment, just buy it. And the next year, focus on another piece of equipment and just buy it. And then we wouldn't have to always have these, you know, coming back to the voter, coming back to the voter, coming back to the voter, because if they don't approve it, it's, you know, provider, it's hard. So I don't know, I mean, that was always my hope, is just that we would focus on a couple of pieces of equipment, like road improvements. Take a certain amount each year, just dedicate it, and have you guys, department heads, arm wrestle for which piece of equipment it was going to be, and just do it.
You know, I think that the spirit of that is really in the 10-year equipment plans, and building up the funds that were created, so that, if you remember, for the first few years, you're trying to level out the financing, and then get to a place where the equipment funds themselves are healthy enough to do exactly what you're talking about. Start making purchases out of the funds with voter approval to access.
Right, right. But how do we get started? I mean, it seems like we're still going down the same road, and
Yeah, it's a good question. The way that Karen and I had explored doing it was, I think they had a 3-year plan for catch-up. And so for the this budget season, and also next budget season, there will still be pieces of equipment that are coming out of, financing. And then by the 4th year, the goal really was to start having the funds themselves start to
Build.
get built enough so you can do that. And if you remember, Doug kind of presented the concept of
Right.
the 10-year plan. I think a lot of discussion back then was about leveling. And so, starting to really plan out the lifespan of the equipment and getting ahead of it so that the purchases are basically, fairly equal each year. And the fund itself would never dip into the negative. You always be keeping it steady.
do you think the voter, when he's going to the ballot box and he's looking at this and he's voting on it, that he realizes that it's going to be 5 years, 3 years, that he's not just paying $115,000 and
One of the things that I see that's misleading is because it's already in the budget, when it gets put on the warrant article, it says zero tax impact. Which that's misleading to the public. It should say that the tax impact is out of the budget and it's this amount. You know what I'm saying? Because people look down to that and go, oh, no tax impact, check that out. It's kind of misleading, and I'm getting a lot of complaints on that they really don't know what's going on.
I know last year in the warrant article that I did put the payment for each year, or the estimated payment for each year on any lease purchase that we did, so that everyone was aware that the first year was going to cost this, the second year was going to cost this, the third year was going to cost this for principal payment. I never know what I'm going to get for an interest rate, but that way people can see that on the warrant article when they vote. It's on the warrant article, it goes to the ballots.
Is it on each year, Karen, or is it on just the first time?
It was on the first time,
Yeah.
but now we have to put any of those leases that have a non-appropriation warrant article that were voted in, you have to vote to make the payment each year of that lease.
And would it be clear to a voter that if we fail to pass it?
It's going to be on the next warrant article. It's going to say if it is not passed, we will be losing some pieces.
Because that piece of equipment has to go back to the...
And I've sent what I drafted for a warrant article out to DRA to get approval on it. So they'll tell me one way or the other if it has to include money or if it doesn't have to include money.
any other comments on that?
Well, I have a question about this. So this is a service truck that we're looking to set up?
Correct.
Instead of
It's a replacement of a pickup truck, with more of a service truck.
Right, but you don't have a service truck, I haven't had one.
It would not have.
So there's 29 to 30 grand, that's a brand new F-350 cabin chassis?
You didn't want to specify exactly what type
Yeah.
you were gonna say a one-ton pickup, because if you specify, you have to buy that particular type.
I was just saying, just conceptually.
That's what I have on my,
Cabin chassis, so where's the body coming from?
Oh, will we be bidding out for getting the best pricing out of the
No,
chassis?
but the body isn't in that $30,000.
It's 89,000, it's 89,000, and it's gonna be split 3 ways. On the payment, 30,000 coming from FEMA, some coming from the sewer funds because it's also gonna be used.
So it's a $90,000.
It's 90,000.
It's essentially, Steve, what we're looking to do is, like what Water and Light has, for their utility trucks, like Kevin Sorrell drives or Robbie Haywood.
Yeah.
Essentially that, and we went down to Water and Light and did some measurements, and would, in the wintertime, we'd be able to put a B-box in the back, a sand box, and put a plow on it, so it is a serviceable truck in the winter also. But we want to set it up as a mechanic's truck for Bruce. As this program develops, we need.
I just missed the $60,000.
What's that?
I just missed the $60,000.
Oh, okay.
I thought it was a hell of a deal.
For the vehicle plan that I passed out to you, I changed it to a 4-year catch-up plan. And so the 3 vehicles that are highlighted in blue, I don't have a copy of it, the 3 that are highlighted blue rather than yellow, those are the 3 that I slid out. So I moved the 10-wheeler and, because I didn't want to just move the 10-wheeler into next year because then it creates a huge spike for next year. So I shifted out 2 other pieces of equipment as well to basically convert it to a 4-year catch-up plan. Is basically what we're doing by deferring the 10-wheeler. So that's all that's reflected in this revised plan that I passed out to you tonight. In terms of the financing of it, Karen had that all in her spreadsheet to how the financing broken out on the bottom.
and I will have to review that.
Yep. And this presumes the sweeper is I have the sweeper still in there for this year, but if that changes, we can adjust the plan that way as well.
How many miles of out-of-town roads do you have, and how many miles of in-town streets and roads do you have?
For a bill on that one, I don't know the number.
I don't have those off the top of my head.
55 miles on blacktop
Blacktop.
Yep.
and 64 miles of road.
Okay.
Yeah, it's only like about 15 miles of dirt road.
Yep.
And the rest are all paved.
64 miles, 15, so we're down into.
But what is considered out of city center, like out by where Roger is and out around the lake, paved roads like that,
No, that's good enough.
I would like to say there's
That's
probably
fine.
close to 15 to 20 miles of out of town, what we would
Yep.
call out of the city center.
Okay, thanks.
One thing I'd like to add to what Bill was saying about ways to improve the, if we do get a new sweeper, ways to make it last longer. We talked about using the brooms and the equipment. There's another thing we're looking at too, and that is changing to a different brand of sweeper truck. And the one that we're looking at has a stainless steel body that has a lifetime warranty on it. And that's been a big issue with our current sweepers. We've been patch welding that thing like crazy because the bodies are rotting out. So the pricing that we have in the vehicle plan to get a sweeper with a stainless steel lifetime body on it. So
It has a stainless steel, is that what you're saying?
yeah. So that's another improvement we're looking to do with the new sweeper.
Did you want to talk to them again?
Yeah, I want to bring Bruce up and introduce him. I don't.
Yeah, please introduce them.
All 5'10", 135 pounds.
He and Steve are, our bodyguards.
Nice to meet everybody. Bruce Russell.
Yeah.
Hi, Bruce.
Bruce has been with us 6 weeks now, and has been just doing an amazing job, taking our shop and getting it up to date to what's going to work for him as a mechanic, and really been doing good things, looking at our new vehicles even. He can talk maybe a little bit about that, but he actually does a thorough review of even new vehicles to make sure they're done correct from the factory. So So he's been doing a lot of good things and getting himself set up to provide some excellent mechanic services. He's reached out to all the departments and started to get familiar with all the equipment and vehicles and
So
doing a
he's
good
gonna
job.
serve in all departments?
He's serving all departments.
So am I going to see now his wages go from one department? We split
Oh,
it?
We have not done that in this budget.
Not in this budget.
So we are looking at, this really represents, I think, a change in direction for how we were doing vehicle maintenance. And when we took an opportunity when the mechanic we had previously left, and Roger actually brought the idea of we should be looking at fleet management, we should be looking at holistically as to kind of save money and take better care of equipment. So with that, Roger and Doug got together and drafted a new job description, come up with a preliminary plan to move towards fleet management, which is more in line with that. We haven't done it fully, this is the first step. It's I think a good first strong step, so.
Well, I don't know if I should jump ahead or not jump ahead, but I'm going to jump ahead. Okay, so I had a situation today. So my husband reported it back to me, so I could ask here. He was coming down Elm Street, and the ambulance went by, the fire truck went by, police car went by, an second ambulance went by, and I'm not quite sure if the second police car went by. And I'm thinking, really, your thing about the equipment dies on the road because of rust, right? So all I could think of was all of those pieces of equipment that responded going over salty roads. And I can understand the police cars always being out there. That's what they have to do. But then I'm also thinking about ambulances and fire trucks and how I don't want them to rust out. They're not easy and cheap. I mean, I don't want anything to rust out, but more vehicles, certain vehicles have more road time than other vehicles. So I hope you're going to take a look and see what we can do to keep them from rusting out.
Absolutely. Well, I'm with you, and I'm waiting for global warming so that we don't have to deal with winter and we don't have to do salt on the road. So we don't think that's going to happen, unfortunately. What I have looked at so far, I've done a quick 6 weeks here, hitting the high spots in all the different departments and getting kind of a broad feel with the police and the fire and public works and highway. I've been up to the transfer station. I haven't caught anybody at wastewater or Parks and Rec yet, but I will. I've been underneath as many vehicles as I possibly can, and Billy and his crew, the fire department guys, they really go at it. Every time those vehicles go out and they come back to the shop, and I think the police department is pretty close to doing the same thing from what I've seen, having the cruisers come in, they've been doing their tires, so on and so forth. That they put the water to them, wash them down, scrub them, rinsing underneath really good. I've gone underneath them and looked to see if there's any solid residue, road trash, grit and grind, sand. They're doing a really good job of keeping up with it and getting those vehicles rinsed off every time they come back to the house, whether it's the fire department house, the public works house, so on and so forth. So that's the first step of defense. Really, other than without putting material down on the roads, you really don't have too many more courses of protection. Now, one of the big things that we did do, now we're starting to do, the game plan for the fleet protection for the long-term look at preserving all these pieces of equipment is for, 3 to 5 year plan, hopefully longer down the road is the game plan, is preserving all these pieces of equipment, trucks, the backhoes, anything. It really kind of applies to every piece of equipment in the town's arsenal, is prepping these things, taking them apart, cleaning them, because when they come to the factory, brand new and stuff, they don't care what you guys are buying in any way, shape, or form. They just throw them together and run them off the assembly line. And what you get is what you get. We just take, for example, the 2 10-wheel trucks that we just got. Those things, we went and picked them up from the dealership. And I wasn't in on the deal, but it took forever to get them. And when we got them, it was just before, it was the day before Thanksgiving. They should have been here a long time ago, but with COVID and everything, that was kind of an issue that held everything up. But we didn't put them into service. right away, because everybody around town's like, how's the new trucks? And so, we don't know yet, they're in the shop. I'm like, what do you mean they're brand new? We brought them in, we took them all apart.
So that should be one of our lines of defense and how coordinated service plan between all the departments.
Right, well, what we did is, because Roger can say as well as anyone, when this salt stuff gets in, you take in a vehicle, they don't prime or paint or preserve anything from the factory, it's all there.
Right.
You take a vehicle, it goes through the first winter, you can't take anything in the car unless you got a big hammer and a set of torches. So what we did with these vehicles, and I have a game plan doing with everything in the fleet in the town that I can get my hands on, going right through them, just pulling them all apart. We strip them right down, pull all the wheels, drums, hubs, suspension parts, shocks, nuts and bolts, hardware, brake systems, all the plow, municipality stuff. We spent 2 weeks on both 10 wheels and pulled them all apart. We greased everything. I found brake shoes from the factory that weren't even moved, where all the anchor pins go. Never seized all the suspension bolts, shock bolts, everything on the frames. Checked all the hoses and wire. You wouldn't believe how many things I found loose from the factory. I took, for example, on one of the, I think it was Ross Kendall, I took the cotter pin out of the castellated nut that's on the pitman arm that comes off the steering box to the drag one on the front axle, and I took it off with my fingers. It wasn't even torqued. I found a bunch of brackets and different things that were loose. We went over every nut and bolt with a torque wrench that we could possibly get our hands on, checked everything, greased it, moved it, put it all back together. We spent a lot of time. In fact, we had some of the local town departments, highway guys from the surrounding towns, they knew about it. They came up just to see what we were doing. Because they'd never heard of such a thing.
And the undercoat.
And the undercoat. And after we got done all that, like Billy said, Ren got in there and did a great job in the special undercoat stuff that everybody's been using lately. Once they were all done prepping everything put back on, wheels torqued, the whole 9 yards, undercoated those vehicles, top to bottom, inside out, to preserve and seal them from the salt getting through it. I plan on doing that to the Granite backhoe, the 550, and any of the old vehicles and stuff. So.
Are there any other questions for him? John?
I can't help myself. I like listening to this stuff, it's great. So the thing that I think is important is that, you know, the vehicle plan you did is combined with his knowledge of how to fix things and keep them going, so that in fact we spend less on the 10-year plan or whatever it is versus what we might have before.
Yep.
And then all the things you're doing, I'm guessing save quite a bit of money if we really go at those pretty careful.
It's a long term.
Yeah.
So 3 years from now, say for example, has to change the steel on the front end. That was bad. But getting to it, Roger said it was good. Getting to it, all pieces we had to take out.
Yeah.
They were so seasoned, rusted together, but from the factory, this was a 10-year-old truck. No whatever. Took, well, George worked on it like a day just to try and get it apart to save it and salvage it. It was prepped and everything. It would come apart within a couple hours. We used a lot of the parts that were in the front axle and put that together and saved it. Just had to do the U-joint and seal it. And not have to go through all the other parts and pieces because they were rusted pieces. You have to do bare metal on the factory. So that's a long term on everything. Fire trucks, any piece of equipment in the town's fleet, you know, even the cruisers, I mean, everything. Just long-term longevity prevention for years down the road. That's our game plan.
Thanks.
I agree, we'll all have to grease you, so he and I will sit down and go, because we haven't had a chance to sit down and go through this plan, but really look at those replacement cycles that we have in that plan, and based off his experience, and knowing that we properly maintain our equipment to his standards, that, you know, what can we do to, you know, extend the life of our equipment. So we'll be doing that.
So this is a new position that you guys open it up?
It's an improvement to our existing mechanic. It's an upgrade to the mechanic.
I understand that, but it's not a job that does it just to open it up, to get a mechanic for you guys.
Well, we've always had mechanics, Rudy.
You did?
Yep, we've always had mechanics, Bruce. It's just what we're doing is, there was always a mechanic's position. But now we have a mechanic to get into that position. We've always had people that could fix your, make things run. Bruce has been in the business for.
I understand, nothing against that gentleman.
Yeah, but yes,
What you're gonna do, you're gonna take care of the ambulance, you're gonna take care of the police
Yeah,
car.
everything.
We have
Everything.
that.
Okay.
I take care of everything in the town's fleet. I've been around checking it all out, looking at everything, inspecting stuff, checking a list and making a list and checking it twice, yeah, we're on it.
Well, gentlemen,
Thank you.
we've gone, how long have we haven't even gotten off the first board. But, so Karen, let's just recap. So you're going to reduce $115,000 down to approximately $90,000 or 90?
I have
97,000.
97,000.
And then you're adding the 30,000 for the other.
Yes, it will have to be, the warrant article will have to have the total price in it and what is coming from the different funds.
Right.
But the estimated tax impact, part of it would be between 29 and 30,000.
So instead of having 115,000, we're now up to 127,000. I just want to,
Yes.
just, transparency here. And also, I appreciate this. However, I would appreciate, I think everyone here would appreciate it, if we know with the police department, every 3 years, 3 cruisers. But we don't know about the fire department, so here. So, we really need to get it all together.
We supplied all that at an earlier meeting. The select board adopted the equipment plans for each department. They do that annually now. But we could get updated ones, but we
Right.
could remember.
We need to see that because we're kind of, we took the 10-year off and we put this other one in, but we still raised it some money, so just trying to keep track of all of these things. Thank you. Do you have any other questions for Doug?
I also have Bruce here to speak for the fire department, if they fire engines, so he's available when we get to that
Okay,
discussion.
sure. Thank you.
And if you want, I can introduce our new fire chief in other meetings, but I don't think I've introduced him. So just in case he's probably going to speak to. So this is Michael McQuillan.
Hey, everybody.
Michael is, I'll just read what I've read about you in the past, if you're okay with that.
That's okay.
So he's well-educated and highly experienced leader in the fire service, and he's continued demonstrated excellence. He has demonstrated a steady history with the Londonderry Fire Department, where he had advanced professionally as the battalion chief of operations. In that executive level position, Mike demonstrated the high-level leadership and management in his role, as well as a keen understanding of those engaged in firefighting and emergency medical service delivery. So he had EMS experience. So the process was really long and well vetted, and we just appreciate everybody's patience in it. But now we've got our new fire chief in place.
If you would like to go around the table and just introduce yourselves to Mike, I think that would be helpful.
John Goodrich.
Diane Cummings.
Dan Stearns.
Karen Noyce.
Andrew.
Steve Kelly.
And before we get started, I see Megan sitting over there, and I don't think we have any questions for Megan. So, I just didn't want you to have to sit here and listen to the whole evening and then find that out. So, thank you for coming, and I don't think there are any other questions for the library, so, thank you. Thank you. All right, so we have a couple of questions. Do we want to go that one article first and get that tidied up? I mean, that would be nice to have one more article tonight. Did you want to add anything to the sleeper?
On the sleeper part, I just got the actual estimate today from research. What they would charge us to do the sleeper in town, and it ends up, I mean, they do it on bid, they don't do it by the hour. They figured it by the hour somehow, but just for the whole town, 4 or 5 days, 55 miles of blacktop, 20,625 dollars.
And that's just for 5 days.
4 or 5 days, 3 sweepers, in and out, done. One time.
It has nothing to do with like, scheduling, like, Billy probably said.
No, coming back and doing touch-ups and stuff like that, there's nothing to do with that. Majority of the hurt is put on sweepers in the spring with all the fresh, all the piles of sand that's got to come out.
And I know, personally speaking, and others, that in the springtime, when the weather gets nice and the town, they have the equipment, they do a fabulous job getting the streets up to par. And I know a lot of joggers and bikers, they really appreciate that because you can get out and do what you want to do without having to worry about having a mishap. So, and that's another benefit that by having the equipment in house, it just makes everything go along so much smoother and lets our town folk get out there and even visitors I know who come into town because our roads are swept up and in such good shape. They come here to jog and bike and it's really much appreciated. So I definitely would support the street sweeper purchase.
From someone that wasn't outside prior to this, my wife and I, we've always wanted to live in the downtown area, and that was one of the reasons we were walking downtown, the village where it's clean. And I give kudos to these guys for that, because obviously we've been in other places that isn't that way. That is one of the attractions to Littleton, along with the beauty of it, is just that it's clean and it's nice in the downtown area. And enjoying the shops and stuff is something that is noticed, so kudos to you guys.
And I do.
Regular quick question though. How many times a year do you guys run that sweeper for 5 days like he's talking about? And what months do you do it?
Well, we do it after mud season.
Okay.
In the mud season, spring cleanup is what we call it.
So
We're out
for
there
5
running.
days?
Well, we're probably running more than 5 days. We're doing the whole town and doing all the roads.
So like how many days?
Yeah, that's a good question. Bill just left, so I don't have the exact.
And then after that, when do you guys
So
do
then we do it
it?
again in the fall.
So you do it twice?
We do it twice for a full town-wide sweeping.
And he's saying $20,000 each time, so it'll be $40,000.
Yeah.
See, that's really complicated now. Because the $20,000 is a no-brainer, don't buy the sweeper. Even at $40,000 is borderline. That's
But
So
I'm also
the
wondering,
cost was 50, I think it was 50,000 a year.
That's doing catch basins, that's doing
Do the basic.
intermediate sweepings.
400 catch basins was $30,000. And that would be the first year. All the catch basins don't fill up every year. And then they get on a plan where we only need 150 of them done. That one can wait 3 years, and that's the way that they work. With the shop vac thing that's on this one that you're talking about, we'll pick up a lot of stuff out of the catch basins. When you get that big truck to come in, they'll clean it right to the bottom. So there is a difference in the quality of what's done in the catch basins. And it's just something I'm bringing up just so that you people know that, and when he comes to town, like I said, the wear and tear of the brushes, it's all on him. No, you gotta supply him with a truck, but we have to supply our own sweeper with a truck. So that's a wash. And it's just something that I thought we could, look into and maybe.
So what do you think, Roger, the real number is, annual cost to have everything done in front of us?
I mean, by the looks of it, to do all the catch basins the first year and have the town truck, you're looking at $50,000.
And on a maintenance basis after that?
You mean the maintenance as far as the catch?
Well, like you
basins?
mentioned, the catch basins don't need to be done at that same level every year. There's a cycle to them, right?
Right, every year. So, I mean, it all depends on where they are. If they're at the bottom of Pleasant Street where everything comes down into that basin, that will probably get in there every year. But some of the other ones, you can go 3 years, 4 years before they have to be touched.
So what's your gut feeling what the number would be after the first year on an annual basis for the machine?
Probably between 10 and 12,000 is what he was estimating for the catch basins, and still the 20,000 sweep.
Okay,
So, I mean, it's still.
So 30 to 35,000. But then in that situation, we don't have the daily availability to do
I mean,
Why
dressing
can't
up
we
as
keep
you
the
would.
old one and use it as a spare when we need it to go do something like that? though?
well, I didn't realize the old one was in quite as bad a shape as it is, and that's what I thought, that if we could get it swept in the spring and take ours and just do the maintenance, that we could save a bunch of money.
Bruce has
Bruce has some more information there. Just to answer your question, doing some research because, you know, I'm new here and everything. Back in the day, when they had the sweeper, when they bought the sweeper new, you know, back in 2002, and even the guys that did it before then, they typically, what their routine used to be, was a Thursday, it would be a Wednesday night and a Thursday, whichever one of the two sweeper operators would come in at midnight, and they would sweep till 8 in the morning, once a week, and do a section of Main Street, do some parking lots, do some side streets and whatnot. So people who are out and about are up early in the morning, they might see this sweeper going around doing sections of town, so they would do it a little bit of the town on the good parts of the streets and stuff once a week. As the sweeper deteriorated from wear and tear, because the sweeper basically is a big sandblasting machine, it's sucking up all the grit and grime and everything and blowing it into the hopper, and that's where it wears the holes out of the hopper bed that contains all your debris and stuff. It wears everything out just like a sandblaster. The reliability and this, that, and the other thing, the sweeper was so unreliable, dying in the middle of the street. It has a, you know, because of wear and tear, old age on the electrical components and things to do with the motor and stuff, it would go into what they call a bypass loop mode, and so they would have to shut off when it would clear it off, get the computer to come back on. It's one of many things. So they've been babying it by, is what they have been telling me about. And I've only been able to look at it a little bit. We brought it out of storage, opened it all, kind of went, all of us went around and saw what kind of repairs it was in. It's got a lot of worn out parts and pieces and stuff. It's really in dire straits, you know, the bottom line. But going along through another year, basically what they were doing with it for the past year or whatever is just trying to use it once a month, and then hopefully the thing wouldn't break down and be catastrophic. And it's really going to be the game plan this year to reuse it again. Just try to limp it along and we'll fix it up the best we can to get it through another year, type of deal. So that's a scenario that everybody's looking at in that department.
So we're looking at 9 years, they said they refurbished it, right? And halfway through its life, it's been 18 years, so 9 years. So 10 years.
Yeah, with 2013, when they put $35,000 into it at the, must have been the dealer.
So if you look at 270, divide that by 9, then you come up with that number versus the 35. It almost comes up.
You would have to take that 35, add to it, and then divide it by 18, because if you think about how much they put into it, that extended the life of it.
Right.
So it's 18, so your annual fee, it's really low. So, like for example, I think if we do 30 for 10 years, it's 300.
Right.
Throw the extra 32,000 in. So you're at 332,000. And I think there was another push, so we had to put more money into it.
Yeah, well, the truck chassis engine itself was rebuilt in frame a few years ago, and so that was a cost of, there was a guy that worked at the town highway department, and he did the labor, but, you know, he had the parts of the engine cost and machine work. So that was, rough estimate, what he did the paperwork was like $4,500 in parts. The pony motor in the back of the unit that runs the actual vacuum is a John Deere 4-cylinder diesel. That was brand new 2 years ago, and that was, what was that, $7,000 or $8,000 that they put onto that. That's 2 years old, and that's got some fuel system issues and stuff. It won't start on its own. It needs to be babied along and coaxed and everything to get fired up. And once it's running and doing its thing, but it just takes a while. So, you know, there's all these little quirks and stuff that add to the list of things. So there's a lot of stuff. But if you look like the initial year, to get caught up on all the cleaning stuff, because it hasn't been done thoroughly, because they've only been babying along to do, you know, once a month through the summer or for the last year or two. Initially, Billy had a figure on his paper from Avery, was $50,000 to $60,000. If you spent that kind of money to do everything the same way every year, whether or not it needs it, like Roger said, or not, I mean, I don't know anything about cleaning catch basins, so I can't tell you anything in that department whatsoever. But just quick math, if you did $50,000 or $60,000 for 5 years, you paid for the sweeper in one quick aspect, you know, if you look at it that way, type of deal. So there's a lot of apples and oranges to compare across the board.
Yeah, we just running the rough numbers of it, looks like from you said I added up to 344,500. And that just estimating, probably plus or minus about 19,000 bucks a year.
Plus his time doing all the maintenance on it. And then the winterizing it and getting it ready. It's a toss-up, really.
You know, I think one more tough thing about, because Littleton is like a Main Street community, one of the big complaints I get, and we got it, and I could tell it, because of the complaints that come in, the parking lots themselves, Saranac Avenue, 6th Street, any of the curb lines, they started adding up, when it, instead of being that once a week, it went to the once a month.
Probably better that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
All right, so I think we probably kicked the can now. Okay, what are your thoughts? We are apparently suggesting that they are going to break that warrant article up into 2 pieces, right? And the first one for the sweeper, and that would be $97,000 times 3 years, correct?
My estimated tax impact is going to be 0.13 per thousand. We're doing it the way that we talked about earlier. It was going to be 0.154.
So do I have a motion to accept, what, we want to make a motion?
I make a motion that we accept, Karen's proposal to have a separate warrant article for approximately $98,000 per year for 3 years. Lease purchase of a new street sweeper with the tax impact of $21,300 per thousand as stated.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any opposed? Is it all unanimous? Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5.
You know, I want to give a shout out to Roger too for looking into that, and I think it's good with each thing, you know, a lot of times we'll just pass it through thinking, well, we absolutely need it, or we're not going to need it. So I think even just going through this is a,
Options.
it is
Yeah.
options, right? And I appreciate the work that you do.
I do. And if our sweeper wasn't in such bad repair, and we could use it for the other things that we, but right now it makes sense to probably just.
So one thing, if the warrant article fails for some reason, it may be worth looking into getting this town swept up for $20,000 and trying to get Bruce to make ours go for another year and then put it back on. You know what I'm saying? Because I know that if they go to try to sweep the springs sand, it'll kill it. Just from what he's telling me. So if we could nurse it by to do the maintenance, if something happens and it gets voted down, that we have an optional plan.
There's I did talk to Vikings today, which is one of the suppliers that Bill mentioned. They do rent sweepers as well. So if we had gathered in an emergency situation, we could rent a sweeper.
She's just asking for a demo run.
Yeah,
Demo.
Yeah, there's a demo. Yeah.
Okay, and so we have a second part to this now for the 1 ton.
My estimate cost per thousand, and this is an estimate, but I believe I'm really close, is 0.037 per thousand for a roughly $30,000 impact.
So that's a, you want to write it down, 1 ton, to be outfitted for all those purposes. And 30,000 coming from sewer funds?
No, there'll be 30,000 coming from sewer, 30,000 from FEMA, and whatever's left from
raised
appropriated. From
The total price of
the total price I have for an estimate is 87,000 completely outfitted, correct?
Correct.
Can I ask a question on that? So, why don't you go with a 5,500 Cummins diesel for 56.5? and then you got the extra capacity to put sand up, plow, everything versus a 1 ton that, I don't know, I just look at a 1 ton as like a grocery getter. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so to answer that question, good point. One major problem with the Dodge, they have a lot of weak points in them, front ends, electrical systems, things like that. We have a fleet of F-550 Super Duties. The 1 ton is being the utility vehicle that it is. Right now, it's a crew cab, 8-foot bed pickup truck with a sand in the back and the front. One thing Billy mentioned that might not have really kicked in is that this is the emergency vehicle for the town. It's multi-purpose. So in the wintertime, our department gets to use it to plow the compound and municipality parking lots and different things. Like wherever it's needed, it's also a backup truck in case one of our trucks go down, which we do have change brake and regular maintenance with sanders and plows and stuff like that. We've had a few of those breakdowns. The truck is multi-purpose. That in the summertime, it's used for emergency, which the big emergency in the summertime, not in the wintertime, is the wastewater plant in the system. So that truck is on call, and there's people in the public works that are on call 24/7 all year round, but even more so in the wintertime. This truck is, with the utility body that they want to put into it, it will house the sand that they already have. This truck has a new plow, which we already have. We just have to mount it to the truck and connect it, hook it up. With the utility body, they can have all the tools that they need for the public works, emergency work, and 1/2 of the truck can be for the wastewater thing in case there's an emergency, because the important part about this truck is if there's a leak or a waste, every second counts. And that truck has to be available and ready. It's at the highway department for whoever's on call to get there, ASAP, jump in the truck and get there so that there isn't a liability and a leakage, spillage, DES, and everything else. So this truck covers a multiple different bases. Dodge doesn't work out too good because I work for all the other town municipalities and they have a few of them, and their longevity and their holding up record isn't as good as Ford, Chevy, GMC, International, whatever. So that's kind of.
So why don't you go with like a Ford F-550?
We got a fleet of them.
So, but with the F-550.
This single wheel truck gets into different places.
Oh, you want a single wheel?
Single wheel, that's what we have now. It's a single wheel 1 ton.
Yeah.
It gets into tighter places, because like my job, this new job description, I take care of the campus around the fire department, police department, public works, highway department. The 550s are big and wide with the dump bodies and all that stuff. They're extra money, they're rigged up than the pickup truck. Plus we can utilize the equipment that we have in the F-350 now. We can swap it over, not have to buy all this stuff. We can convert it over, hook it up, and keep on using it because it's in good shape. Like the plow was new last year. And the sander is electric, it's stainless steel. It's in great shape. So there's no need to buy all this stuff. We can slide it in, convert it, and make it all work.
Rather you guys are starting from scratch.
Right. We're trying to utilize as much as we can out of the fleet and not repetitiously buy different things and longevity and everything. So that's kind of the game plan there.
Okay, so I'm going to move the question. Does anyone want to make a, yeah?
Okay, I make a motion that the town purchase that 1 ton replacement vehicle to be funded 1/3 FEMA, 1/3 sewer funds, and 1/3 of the total cost coming from a taxpayer impact, and that would be 0.037 per thousand on the tax rate.
An $87,000 purchase.
For a total of $87,000.
All in favor, say aye. Or can I have a second? I'm sorry, can I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Steve? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All approved?
Now let's move to the fire department fire truck. And then I'm hoping that we can get the transfer station done. Two, I think there's only one for the transfer station.
All right, fire truck, vehicle lease. Do you want to, who wants to introduce this?
So I think maybe we'll let Michael take it over.
And it's one of those things, I'm not sure what the current order actually says, only the one that I had. I've had a problem with my email where the emails that were coming to me weren't coming directly to me, they were still being forwarded to the interim chief. So I haven't had a chance to see a lot of the stuff going on with the budget. And the last one that I saw for the warrant article, I want to say that it said up to $1 million for a fire truck. And I don't know if that's still correct or not. But looking at the fleet that we have, we do have some issues with the two engines that we currently have as our workhorses of the fire department for responding to fires and motor vehicle accidents and those kinds of things. I think $1 million is a little, that's very high. And from what I was told from the interim chief is that he had put that in there with the hopes of buying some equipment to replace some of the equipment that we may need for the truck. And I'm not comfortable lease purchasing, if you will, the equipment for the truck, because I think those tools and equipment, the hose that we use, the hand tools that we use, you can probably find that out of a different financing tool as opposed to lease purchasing it over a period of time. And I would probably feel more comfortable with that number being in the $650 range, somewhere down around there, looking at $600,000 to $650,000 for a fire truck. Looking at trying to get a demo or something along those lines. Having talked with Bruce and met with him today, kind of going through the trucks. And speaking to what you were referring to this morning with the salt on the roads and stuff that does destroy the trucks, I'm going to give kudos to the guys at the fire department for their ability. I recall they were washing the trucks down and going to the undercarriage and actually spraying it down, witnessing them actually do that. And talking with Bruce about the lack of corrosion that we have underneath the truck that has allowed them to, remain with us for 25 plus years, if you will. It is a testimony to what they're doing to actually keep the trucks maintained. Coming from the southern part of the state with some of the busier departments, they have trucks that after 10 to 12 years, the frame rails have rotted out on the trucks because the brine and salt solution that's on there isn't getting rinsed off in a period of time when they back into the station and is causing damage to the truck. So looking at the trucks that we currently have, the two engines that we have one that we picked up from Rochester as a backup truck that I believe was received last year.
This spring.
This spring, okay. Which is a reserve truck, and it's, the body on that truck is mainly aluminum, and it doesn't have as much corrosion as the frontline truck that we have right now that we refer to as engine 6. That engine 6 has a lot more, if you will, some rust and corrosion that's occurring in the compartments and stuff. It's got some electrical issues that are going on with it. And I've recently had a pump company that came up that specializes in the fire pumps called Perkins Pump, just to take a look to see where we're at. And they're familiar with the truck from Rochester. That pump is in a tough position. It's seen some wear and tear. It was one of the reasons why Rochester was getting rid of that truck. So looking at the pump on engine 6, I have some more, kind of research to do on that for some repairs that are going to be made to that truck for some of the valves that need to be replaced. But the main pump itself, as we get into that with the transmission and stuff, I may have some work on that. And I think the primary truck to look at replacing is going to be engine 6, just with some of the issues that are going on with that truck and some of the problems that we currently have with it.
So you're thinking 650, so that would be 5 years, and we have...
Well, I had estimated because the intern chief did let me know by email, and I'm not sure who was on the loop with that, but he had said that he had figured about $600,000.
Okay.
And we were looking at 5 years, and this is just the principal portion. So the first payment would be in 2021, $120,000 for 5 years.
And that's just the principal?
Yes. I would have to get some estimates for the interest, but at this point, the interest isn't too bad. I also am thinking, and this is another one of those things I'm going to jump in, possibly doing it as a bond or a loan. It would require a majority vote, but that way we're not having to come back and ask because it has an estate. It would, if we did it as a lease and it had an escape clause, we would have to come back and ask every year.
So it needs a 60%.
60%.
Very question. Is Bruce had a chance to look at this vehicle? And two, if it's not worth anything to us, what happens to the old vehicle?
Or where he hasn't worked on vehicles?
So, over the past 6 weeks, what little bit I've had time to look at this particular engine, I have had to do a couple things to it. And at that time, I did really roll around underneath it and give it a really quick inspection, but look at all the high spots and everything. We had to fix a couple of air leaks on it, couple of wire issues underneath it and whatnot. There was an arm spot that was broken and whatnot. Mike and I just got together today to meet for the first time, so we're doing a lot of real catch up here on this six-week term. And we're getting less than a day and a half on it and everything. So there is, I noticed a spot on the main frame in front of the right rear dual set of tires that's festered up and it's looking like it's starting to be an issue. Didn't get real crazy about delving into it and digging it all apart to see where it's at. Today we had a new discovery when we were over at the firehouse today that inside the center of the truck, the mast that holds the main pump, where the water cannon tower is, one of the guys is going to be in the compartment and whatever. You have to take the whole thing apart to really get in there to see everything. You know, these fire trucks are all built around the main structure. There's something in there for the main frame structure that supports and holds the main water pump of the truck that has deteriorated, broken, and let go and something, so that really is a high point to take a look at and see. We didn't have time today to dig into it. We just found out about it today, right after lunchtime.
Bruce, we don't have a pit.
We don't have a pit. We do have a 30,000 full post lift, so it's very handy. But we can't pick up everything that's in the town's fleet.
We can't pick up that fire truck.
We can pick it up if we unload it and completely unload it. Water tank, extra tools, any spare freight, and we have done that. It's a process, but it's a safe way to do it. And to preserve, one of my big things is preserving the preservation of the four-post lift. It is only 5 years old, but if you keep overstressing it, we're going to kill the longevity of that lift, and those lifts are expensive. So proper maintenance, adjusting, moving, and all that, that's all going to be part of our program also. But we can get underneath it, but you can roll around underneath it with a creeper also.
But if you're thinking about, cleaning the bottom of the vehicle and avoiding this situation again in the future, I mean, most everybody in the industry, if you would be utilizing a pit today, wouldn't they?
Well, they would, right. They've been kind of, Roger, you can kind of help me on this one here. I think at some point they became somewhat illegal because of fumes and stuff.
Yeah,
They didn't talk about it, there's a pit out there, right?
well, they put a lot of stipulations on pits today. And I don't know if municipalities can have them.
Yeah, it's kind of a grandfather clause thing. If somebody's got one, it's kind of...
Is it a confined space thing?
It's because fumes lower and drop, and so you're putting yourself in harm's way. Actually,
There's more risk of falling than it is.
Coming about the fumes.
We do have a high-end pressure washer system with a bar that's 2.5, 3 feet, and it's got 2 wheels on the end, and we've got enough rod that we run it underneath to try to do the pressure washer cleaning, that type of stuff. And that's typically done weekly. We do a weekly truck check for it, depending on what's going on. So it's done at least weekly, in addition to the normal, just washing it every day.
So like today, when it went out, would it have been washed?
Oh, yes. Yep. It's washed, it's guaranteed to be washed by the start of the next shift in the morning. Regardless of how busy we've been or whatever's transpired.
Underneath and everything?
Yep. Pretty good job done. Not always with the pressure washer, depending on the time, but that does get used quite a bit.
And the guys are getting underneath with the hose, they're getting down underneath the underneath the wheel wells, trying to get up into the frame. When they're using the garden hose itself, they're not getting into the catchment area where the pump is and stuff. But when they use that pressure washer, it gets underneath there and they'll actually spray that area. And they can't reach every single time, but at least we'll get done once or twice a week.
It's done a very effective job because if you roll around, I'm going to tell you, you get dropped on the lift, you roll around, that grime and everything festers in the cracks and the crevices of the frames and leaf springs and the hangers and the shackles and stuff, and there's no sign of that on any of these vehicles and stuff. That system works it's very effective.
If it does get below 15 degrees, we are very careful about washing the trucks because all the compartmentation freezes shut. So we can't access compartments. So I can't say every time, but
you know, a lot, it gets washed off.
I guess, and this is not the time to jump in, but I will just jump in and then we'll go back to you immediately. You know, I'm wondering about the response to all of the emergency, if fire engines go out all the time and I mean, because when we saw 2 ambulances and a fire truck and a police car responding to a situation this morning, and then 15, 20 minutes later, most all of those vehicles were gone except for the ambulance.
If that was the one that was around 8:30 this morning, 8:30, 9 o'clock, there was one ambulance with one engine that went. It was cardiac arrest. So obviously, deployment plan for a serious medical call like that is to send the manpower that's needed to be able to treat the patient, do CPR, take over the airway, breathe for the patient, transport them from the residence out to the ambulance. It's labor intensive. So on those particular calls, it would be the same thing going to a reported building fire. You would get a large response, similar to that. If we're going to have a return of spontaneous breathing, circulation, and be able to save a patient, that's where time is of the essence. So that's the reason why you're going to see the engine in the ambulance that went this morning to that call. One of the things that we've done that was before my arrival was they had bought a utility pickup truck that they refer to as X2. And that's the one that's taking a lot of the ambulance calls right now, that if they have a medical that requires the third person that's on shift, that will go instead of the fire truck so that the wear and tear isn't on that fire truck. You will still see that fire truck going out for motor vehicle accidents out on the highway, or if they're doing some type of a training event and that same type of call comes in. Staffing, you know, that will be the vehicle that they will use because that's the one that they're in.
Yeah, I think, you know, we're all very interested in that. And we all want you to respond in the way that you have to respond. However, it just seemed like, you know, and then the other part is we are trying to monitor the expenses of our new ambulance EMS and service. And yet, for all of those, the manpower, was it on the ambulance side, or was it divvied up between fire and ambulance? So we would have an accurate cost of how much the service is actually costing us each year.
You need to break down what we're currently doing right now. I believe it's broken down, and Karen, you can jump into it if I get this wrong, but right now I believe it is broken down so that there are 2 separate budgets, if you will, that are kind of being tracked, one for fire-based EMS and one for the fire department, if you will. So for example, equipment that is bought for the fire trucks and stuff is coming out of the fire department budget, where EMS supplies that we're buying that actually stock the ambulance come out of the ambulance budget. Manpower, I believe, is also being tracked that way, where there are salaries that are associated with the EMS budget, and there are salaries associated with the fire budget.
But even so,
Yeah, we're not doing that per call.
it's not per
We're
call.
not per call. We have it set up right now where we do, 3 of the staff are assigned to the EMS budget. 5. Okay, so we have 5 now, so assigned to the EMS budget. And,
The remainder are assigned to the fire department budget.
So is that a true reflection of how much it's costing us?
Well, the employees that were hired to add to the staff in order to be able to man the ambulance were the 5 individuals. So the most recent 5 individuals are budgeted in that EMS budget. And are we going to be able to divide it out to a timesheet where we have EMS on one part of the timesheet and fire on the other? I'm not sure how that would work.
I think the town just wants to know or have a true reflection of how much this is cost. It's on a 3-year trial.
Right.
And we're just saying, as a budget committee, transparency is.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So, anyways, that was just me. Okay. So go ahead, continue on about the fire budget. Thank you. I appreciate it. So any questions about the fire engine?
I just got one question about the $600,000 transportation device to get out to the cardiac arrest patient. So you guys are gonna change from a $600,000 vehicle down to like a $100,000 vehicle to transport like the manpower to lift the guy on a lat, or you guys are gonna continue to use the $600,000 vehicle to get out to those calls?
Most of those calls would, and I'm gonna say most of them would probably be done with the, if you're using big round numbers, the $100,000 utility truck that we have, stuff that probably used to get out for the manpower.
Sweet.
The utility truck only costs $3,000.
That's even better.
Yeah, this one was, this one was a great deal. It's, I believe it's in 1992, but it's in really good shape and it's serving us well at the moment.
That's good.
The majority of our firefighters are younger than the vehicle, and they do not understand the high-low, beam switch on the floor, because they're just not used to that type of vehicle, so they get chucked on that.
So this is to replace engine 6, is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay. Do I have a motion to accept, I guess it would be 13, warrant article 13 for a fire truck lease, or is it,
Are we going to do it for a bond, or?
For bond.
Because
It
that
could be a decision of the selectman and the town manager.
so.
Either way, I'm estimating about the same payment. With bond, of course,
It's one and done, yeah.
one and done, and it's actually easier because I'm having a lot of the area banks do not want to have a loan or a loan lease purchase on a vehicle that if it's not approved next year,
Right.
They don't want that.
they don't really want it back, but they don't want to lose out.
Well, and I don't know if we want to have all 2 years and then miss out on the 3rd year. I don't think we want that either.
Especially a piece of equipment costs.
So the motion is best way, as you work it out, is that what it is?
I think it would be good with that motion, best way, what
Yeah.
selected in the town manager choose.
I'll second it, but I'll just chime in. I kind of agree with Diane about, I don't like this piecemealing 1 year after the next, because in the end, you pay for it anyway. I bet there's an extremely rare case where you don't. So I really think we should, through the maintenance savings we're going to get over time, we should really get to the point where we use our vehicle plan and space out our purchases to their level, but get to pay for each one as we go.
Yeah.
Rather than have a lot of phone calls.
Right? So anyway, yeah, but I'll second that.
Okay. And that was for 120,000
Per year,
per year?
for 500,000.
Plus interest.
Plus interest, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, on Article 13, why don't you put the regular price, $600,000? Like that, list of the people that vote, they know that this $600,000 is going to be divided. You know, this 120, you can confuse a lot of people.
The amount that's put onto this spreadsheet is only the payment that's due in that year.
I understand.
But the warrant article will list the full price and the number of
Thank you.
years.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So we've had a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Steve, did I hear you?
I'm abstaining on this one.
You're going to abstain, so we have 4-1.
4 to 0 with one abstention.
Yeah.
So do we want to move down to the transfer station?
Sure.
Because we already have votes on the parking lot and the opera house.
The parking lot, we had some questions about it, but we'll go to the transfer station and come back to the parking lot. Thank you, John.
So the warrant article is for $100,000, and the plan was, and it has been, that we were going to buy a new scale. Brian and Wade have to step in? Oh, he's right behind me. I wonder, I can't see who's over there without my glasses on. I can't see it. I wonder where he was. So, Brian, I'm going to have you speak on this because you sent me the information.
Yeah, so it has changed a little. I know Andrew and I talked about it in November, whenever our last meeting was. Originally, it was going to be, what I was looking at is possibly doing $100,000 from taxes and $100,000 from our fund balance. But that was with the new baler and everything like that. It's changed a little. So what it was, which I think is different than your guys's, was I started getting some prices on scales and stuff like that. Andrew and I figured it would be $175,000, which would be $110,000 for a truck scale, $45,000 to close the burn pit area because the road's going through there, and we're going to have to close the burn pit, level off the area behind it for a brush pile, and then our glass recycling program. And then $20,000 for other improvements for the transfer station because of the demand is increasing at the transfer station. Some of it would be offset, of course, from our fund balance. Just don't know that yet. Off the top of my head, it looks like about $50,000 would be going into that fund from this year. But at the same time, we don't want to put that fund to zero. So I don't know if, like, especially I was thinking, 3-year, say, loan for it, then it would be easier just to do like $150,000. So that'd be $25,000 coming from our fund balance. So, but yeah, so truck scale, I know one of your guys' questions was about doing a longer scale to do tractor trailers. The issue with that is we do not have enough room. I wish we did, because that was one of my original plans, was actually have it long enough, and then we could, like with a lot of places, if someone needs to weigh up, we should charge them a small fee and we can get weighed up. So, yeah, is there any specific questions you guys have?
So you feel like you can get the most accurate weight with this proposal? I mean, I think that was one of the things that we were looking at. How can we get the most accurate weight? Because we are paying for different things.
Right, so, because I've been there since 2003, and years ago we never saw really, or very rarely, a trailer come in full of demolition. We'd have the trailers full of shingles and stuff like that, which we'd do by the cubic yard. But with shingles, because they're so heavy, so dense, you could get the calculation down pretty accurate. Now we're getting, like there's one person that comes in with a 15 cubic yard dump trailer. Doing it by the cubic yard, we could be losing $200, or we could be gaining $200. It's just a guess. So with the truck scale, it's going to make it more fair to the users. One of the things, unfortunately, because we, how do I explain this? Sorry, long day at the transfer station. Christmas time.
At dinner time, too.
So, we get a lot of loads which are it's just guessing. It's, we have no idea if we're making money, we're losing money on some of this stuff. A lot of our profit when it comes to demolition debris is actually from the furniture and the set price items, like mattresses, box spring, couches, stuff like that. Nice thing with the truck scale is because we don't need to make that huge profit on the furniture, because we know how much material is coming in from the trailer loads and the mixed loads. We should actually be able to make it more fair and charge less for the couches, the mattresses, stuff like that.
So Brian, one of the questions we had previously was what kind of infrastructure or site improvement costs are related to the scale? And is it going to be at grade so that a truck comes in and just runs right onto the scale?
Yes, it's going to be ground level. The $110,000 is going to be all done by the scale company. So there is a little bit of savings there. It is going to be a pit scale.
In other words, they'll construct the pit,
They'll
they'll
do
do
everything.
concrete, they'll do the whole deal.
They'll do everything.
Okay.
The only thing they will not do is actually run the one electrical wire. Because that you need an electrician, which is a 20, 30-minute job.
Doesn't do that.
So, yeah, I mean, that's, as I said, that's the company coming in and doing everything. That's pouring the concrete, grading everything, running the drainage pipe, that's everything. So, as I said, if the town has time, they could do it, and we could reimburse the town. I wanted to do worst case scenario and just have them do all the work. So, yeah. Yes?
Right, so what's the length of the scale?
You have to ask me. 36 foot, I believe it was.
Okay, and I had asked you this before when you presented this a few weeks ago, but the cost of a full-fledged tractor trailer scale?
I never looked into that just because we do not have the room.
Bless you.
As it is, we're by putting in this scale, we're losing about half of our employee parking lot.
Now, when you say close the burn pit, does that mean just physically moving dirt around, or is there a closing procedure?
So there's no true closing procedure. What it is you have to dig the ash out, you have to get rid of the ash, fill in the pit. But then there's also where everything is going to be going. Right now it's just dirt, so you're going to have to get some loam in or whatever. You're going to need to do a fence. And then there's also stuff out there, since when the place burnt down and they had the temporary transfer station, there's still stuff up there which needs to be disposed of from that. So it's just, like I said, there's a road that's going to be going right through there. So, you are going to need a fence around the area, so just any Joe Smo can't go in it and stuff like that. So.
I think right now I would still ask for a price on a full-fledged tractor trailer.
I can do that, yep.
I think it'd be worth knowing.
Yeah, I agree.
Just for down the road.
Yeah.
And maybe when we get our excavation planners out there, maybe they might find they have more room than they think they have. Sometimes it's hard to envision something until it's actually laid out.
Yeah, I mean, there is one area that you could do it. The issue is they could never make the turn to get out. So I actually went around with the scale company, and we actually went all through the transfer station looking for the best place scenario. Because you need power, you need drainage, and all that stuff. Yeah, there's pretty much 3 areas. So, yeah. I mean, I can, but it's just...
I don't think you can do it.
There's no, yeah.
So you're saying there's absolutely no room?
I don't
There's
think
no, as it is,
So even if it made economic sense to get this larger scale, we would go forward with that because we don't have the room and we would go ahead with the $100,000.
Exactly, yes, yeah, there's, you know, you also have to think, you know, I mean, anybody familiar with the transfer station is a loop. And as it is, tractor trailers have a very tough time turning the loop as it is. And we're going to be actually subtracting more room because of the scale. So there's just absolutely no way that we could do it. Unfortunately, just believe me, I thought of this for years. So
do we have a motion to accept the transfer number 16? Go ahead, yeah.
Okay, I make a motion that we amend the warrant article 16 to place on the warrant a transfer station request for $175,000 to include $110,000 for a truck scale, $45,000 for closing a burn pit and related improvements for recycling, and $20,000 for other improvements. $25,000 of this request come from the transfer station fund balance, and the balance of $150,000 to be funded by the taxpayer and the tax rate.
You say 150 for the taxpayer?
150.
150,000, yeah.
Do I have a second? You'll second it? No. Question? Can I have, is there a second? Okay, go ahead. I'll have more discussion.
Ryan, is there any way to calculate the return on the investment in that scale? And, you know, is it just for convenience and fairness? Or
short term?
Is there potentially some way to pay for this thing?
Short term, there's no way to figure it out. How much it would actually save in money. It's more for convenience. What we are going to run into as the Bethlehem landfill closes in 2025, 2026 is as transportation is going to skyrocket, the more accurate we can become, the better, and we'll make sure we don't lose money.
When Bethlehem closes, where's it all going to go?
After that, there'll be pretty much 2 landfills in New Hampshire, Mount Carberry over in Success, and down in Rochester.
So our costs are going to now include all that transportation costs?
Yes. And that's the scary part. So it said the more accurate we become, the better it will be so we don't overcharge people.
Well, I don't have any problem with overcharging.
Me either. That's on her.
I was more concerned with that disposal.
Do you have something to say, Martin?
Yeah, I guess what I'm looking at is, if they do, when we do closing back, when we end up trucking that stuff somewhere, that if they'll be tractor trailers in and out of there, we'll have to find a place to do this, because we're not shipping stuff all the way up there to 10-wheeler.
Right.
So if we had the full-size scale, that once we get a load, put the truck on and say we have 150 ton, and when it gets up there, they can put it on their scale and say we have 150 ton less the fuel you used to get here, then we know where we're at.
Yeah. I mean, I can look into it. We can hold on to it.
We've lost 100,000 pounds in the last 2 weeks. We need to know where we are, and we know it's coming.
Yeah, definitely.
So, what's our other options for putting a scale in somewhere where we can as ability to use it and not waste money on a short scale when we know we're gonna need it big.
You don't want to buy two?
Yeah.
Steve was raising a point just about like, you know, with the site itself, again, like what you're saying, there's a lot of restrictions in it right now, but if we don't look at it as like this is just one, you know, piecemeal project and take a look at the whole thing, you know, like maybe, for example, where we store cardboard right now, it's in tractor trailers. We could definitely use a lot more storage, and we could probably do it more efficiently in some other kind of a big enclosure where we could, you know, stack up the gateworks. But, you know, it's a much bigger project, but with the big changes that are coming, it might be time to look at a full site assessment.
I mean, I'd be glad to get rid of the truck scale for a year and put some money into it to maybe actually hire a business to come in and do a full-fledged, whatever you want to call it, you know, an actual
Assessment,
look.
yeah.
Yes.
So, we had a motion, we didn't have a second, so I think we're just gonna have to, scrap it for right now, but is there a motion to the select board from this committee about hiring an assessment, putting money in for assessment, or coming back to us at a later date if they need to have the assessment occur next year?
And that's really the team, and you can.
And offer some assistance to Brian and at least get a workshop, my experience in that. Not spending money with a consultant at this point.
So, can
I can support study.
I
That
can
makes
support
sense.
study, but, so, Brian, is there any way that with assistance and maybe outside assistance, that you could come back and say what an assessment would cost?
I mean, if Doug does,
That's
it's
it?
just a matter
Okay,
of
it's a wash.
him having time. Yeah.
Yeah, in-house. So.
Listen, we have hopefully a couple of years before the Bethlehem line closes. So, but at the same time, we don't want to wait till the last minute,
Right.
you know.
So, do I have a motion from this committee that we are going to remove the transfer station repair replacement? Do we have to think of something about the burn pit?
That is the most important thing, because that, when the road goes through, that stuff has to go somewhere.
So
if we,
that's
if we,
45,000?
that's 45,000.
And did you need the 20,000?
And the 20,000 I could actually take right from my fund.
So 45,000.
45, yeah.
Well, then, yeah, 45 and 20 would be, like 20 would come from your funds.
Yep.
So you can access that without, or do you have to have that?
I can
in there?
access that right through this select board.
So we don't need to put it in the water.
Yeah.
But you need one for the 45.
I need one for the 45, yeah. That's the most important thing out of this whole thing, the 45. Yes.
Yes, please.
Okay, well,
So good, dear.
I further amend the transfer station warrant article request to $45,000 to close the burn pit area and related recycling improvements that went along with that. And this would be the taxpayer funding and the taxpayer tax rate.
There's no offset funds.
No
No
offsetting
offsetting
funds.
funds, you can access that with what?
Okay.
You
Do I
want a
have a
second?
second?
Second.
Steve? All in favor?
Aye.
All in favor of that? Okay. 5-0. All right, it is now 6:25. I was thinking we were going to discuss some of the school articles tonight, and since I haven't heard from the school, that's going to have to be tabled, I think, because we do not know certain figures. We don't have the tax impacts. We don't have whether or not they're accessing any of their reserve accounts. I don't think they are, but I want to hear that from them. So anyway, so I have this place, are these people? I didn't know if you're coming in for another meeting or you just coming for our meeting. Okay, great. I didn't know if you were infringing on another. No. Okay. So anyways, I don't know if you guys want to keep rolling.
Is there a way to take
also have the paving, because part of that paving warrant articles for parks.
Yep, our pay, we've already gone over that, I think at a previous meeting, the board approved the parking lot improvement, fund, right?
We had some questions about the 150,000 and which parking areas be included.
As much as possible, but,
Let's just, we can get that,
I
yeah.
can answer that.
Yeah, I met with Chris, and we talked about, we need some improvement in Granite Park parking area. Was it 2 areas?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yep.
And then I was looking at the Muskoma lease parking lot that we have, the things just falling apart. And doing it, so that's basically a repair and improvement. Like possibly do some improvements with that, set it up for better lighting and do some grant curves to go with it. And then possibly the Jack's Junior parking, there's been a project kind of discussed for a while. I believe there was a warrant article last year for some engineering and work for design of that parking lot. So maybe trying to get some work done in that parking lot as well.
So all of that would be 150,000, is that what your guesstimate is?
It may be optimistic to think about like the Littleton Terrace jacks, because we have that absolutely complete. I mean, there's some, challenges, like for example, the bar itself is over $50,000 to be removed. And then, there's some restrictions on the DDS, so I'm sure that'll be monitored very, very close. And when we touch it, we're going to have to address the drainage, lighting, that sort of thing. That all of it will creep up. So I would anticipate that, we would solidly be able to attack Granite Park, Mascoma, and really get the Hillview Terrace through the initial planning phases to really understand what that project's going to cost in total.
But maybe get the barn, that
And the other thing that we accomplished is in the parking plan, there was a very cheap way to add parking, which was the one-way streets, and the parking commission really recommended it to the board. I remember the board was in favor, but that's something that probably could be tackled next year too. But
We don't want to, like, a barn that you want to burn down?
We looked at it, it's really close to other stuff. Doesn't want to burn.
That would be good training. You know you can do it. Okay, so all in favor, or motion, want to make a
Okay,
motion?
I make a motion that we extend place on the warrant the parking lot improvements for $750,000. And I don't know if we want to include those that you mentioned or not in the warrant.
Similar to
Just leave it.
roads, I think that
Just
we
leave
could
it
talk
blank.
about it.
Yeah,
And that way, it's a miracle and we can do.
More.
So which number are we dealing with now?
14.
14. I thought we had voted 5 over favor for it.
No, we asked for information. Okay. So we wanted information. So we have a second?
Mr. Chairman, would you mind to talk about this parking lot improvement, please, under $50,000? Did you mind me to?
Do you want to?
You in charge over here.
We just asked about information on the parking lot.
Information about what? I don't understand what he said.
I can just give you a quick, so what we were just covering, and I have a problem not talking loud enough, so maybe you might not have heard me. I was facing this way. So this would take care of 2 parking areas at Remick Park.
Remick Park?
Yep, and then also there's a parking lot that we're responsible for maintenance behind Mascoma Bank.
Mascoma Bank, yeah.
And then we would also be looking at the continued planning and engineering for the Hillview Terrace, Jack's Junior parking area. And that one is, we don't expect to be able to complete that next year just because of a lot of unknown costs with the barn that's back there. That's $50,000 just for that is estimated for its removal. So.
In your opinion, Mr. Chairman, you think that's how much you worth? It's under $50,000 of a taxpayer? In your opinion? That's what
Are
it
you
is?
bringing it forward to the budget committee for their opinion?
We have some obligations to those leases if we don't maintain them. Is that right? We can be void and we would lose the lease and the parking of.
We have a really generous lease with Mascoma Savings Bank. They lease the parking lot, I think it's $1 a year. but the requirement is that we are responsible for its maintenance.
Do you have any other questions, William?
No.
So we have a motion and we have a second. Steve?
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. You're on.
I'm ready.
Do you want to kind of go over that there so we're not talking behind?
Should I reintroduce Chris now that he's in the door?
I don't know if I recognize him.
So for everyone that doesn't know me, I'm in disguise. Chris Wilkins, until the end of November, I was the Park and Rec Director for the past 3 years. Just recently made the change to Littleton Police. So there were a couple warrant articles that we've been discussing, some needs in the community. Over 3 years ago, they created a dog park committee for the town of Littleton. And our goal is to create a space in town for dogs to be able to go off leash, run around, and just create another recreation space for them. The warrant article that I'm putting forward for the dog park is for the town to be allowed to keep a parcel of land on St. Johnsbury Road. In total, there's actually 2 lots, total of 16 acres, to create a recreation area. So for the land was taken by the town for lack of tax payments, if I'm not mistaken. And so that property has to go out to bid unless we hold it and kind of explore that as a possibility for a dog park. Being 16 acres, for reference, this is a parcel right across from the Kilburn Crags hiking trail that's run by the Conservation Commission. And there's usually cars parked on the side of the road. There are some safety concerns that we'll have to address in this plan, but the dream that I'm putting forward is putting in a parking area that could potentially serve Kilburn Crags as well as this area, but we do have some safety things to work out. A dog park, about an acre, picnic area with some fireplaces, picnic tables, and a disc golf course back through the wooded area. So it would create another space in town that people could utilize, and it's something that we could say, hey, we've got a dog park in Littleton. Come visit, bring your family, bring your dogs. Or for people to just go and have another space. We've got there are a lot of areas in Littleton, but this would add something else to the town and create a space for the dog park committee to be able to put their work into it as well. So this warrant article is for us to be allowed to keep the land to explore the potential for that. If it turns out that safety concerns are too great, it can be auctioned off later at the direction of the town, but it would give us the opportunity and time to explore those possibilities for a dog park in Littleton. There's no tax impact on this one. The dog park committee has already raised over $10,000. So for us to explore it, talk to the county forester a little bit more, get some quotes for logging, it's not going to cost any money for the town to do this. So there's no tax impact for us to be able to explore this possibility. So that is my request. Any questions? Do we need any active motion on this at all?
Well, we do to place it on the ballot. We do. I know that because the E property has become a topic of potential town for us, someone else also said maybe the dog park can be there as well. I don't know how it would develop, but just knowing to have a picnic, a recreational area in the community, that's a little outside of the town area, but anyway, but you're exploring it. And
I can
it's
speak
zero
on the
impact.
property a little bit. So, I know a lot of the history of it. I wasn't here for it, obviously, but one of the reasons why I haven't really explored that over the last 3 years for any of my projects are the cost and the accessibility to it. For anyone to walk into town, you want it to be fairly easy. But to get up in there, to walk there, and then get up into it, you have to be fairly active. I've gone up there and I'm popping pretty heavily by the time I get up to the area that is flat.
if we wanted to put parking up there, you're talking about a pretty good chunk of money to fix up the road to where I would feel safe putting cars up there, removing barriers. So there's more work that has to go into it. So for cost reasons, that, you know, if it's a county or a town forest and, you know, there's an area to park, that's great. There's no area to park unless you start crowding residential streets or put a ton of money into it.
But that's a concern at this other place too, the parking.
It is, but it's a much shorter distance. So the highway code, if we wanted to put in for a driveway permit, it has to be 80 feet off. It's already fairly level, and it's already got good drainage and things like that. You're not going up a quarter-mile trail to an area that you've got to make sure that the road's not going to fall apart, and there's a lot less maintenance to do with that. You know, you can put in a gravel driveway. If we were going to put cars up that little narrow path, it would probably have to be either paved or some serious reconstruction done to it.
And it'd be hard to maintain anyways.
Yes. Yeah, so those are some of my concerns with the property.
Do I have a motion from Dan?
Okay, I make a motion for Article 26 be placed on the ballot for exploration of the dog park off of the St. Johnsbury Road area in Children's Bay. With zero tax impact.
Zero tax impact.
Should we reword it then to say dog park recreation exploration?
Because that's what it is.
Yeah,
It's actually a done deal.
And because I put in, it's not just a dog park, I've started calling it a multi-use recreational area. If that helps.
I mean, the only hesitation maybe to say that would be if everything works out, this is going to delay the project another year versus if you have it, you know, not just exploration but implementation. They may be able to get, you know, really good, you know, set of improvements done for that $10,000 on that parcel.
It's about exploration, possible implementation.
Yeah, authorization actually.
Yeah.
Authorization for implementation of the dog.
With any project, there are concerns that we will need to address. Chief Smith is helping us address some of those, especially if we're putting people across the highway, but those need to be able to be explored in further detail for us to make a final decision on that property.
So one thing I'm seeing on that is no tax impact. A few years ago, they put in for a dog park and it got shut down. But they also put in to raise the dog license $1 for the dog park, and that passed. Everybody with a dog is paying $1 more to go towards the dog park. So I can't say no tax impact.
Right.
On the tax rate, but it's
For this 10,000, there's no tax.
And so,
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
and that is, so we know that we want a dog park in town, and that was set up to help us with maintenance. So if a fence needed to be repaired, that's actually under the control of the select board, if I remember correctly. So if we need to repair, the dog park or recreation committee can come to you guys and say, hey, you know, we've got to repair, can we take $1,000 and replace this section of fencing? And
So do we have money set aside that comes out of that extra $1 that has got some amount in it that?
Small amount right now.
this is the second year, so it's around $3,000. We have about $1,500 in town, give or take each year, and so that gets set aside.
I'm just curious where the money went.
No, it sits there, and that will be our maintenance, so that there won't be a continuing impact, and that goes toward that.
Okay, how do we want to phrase this? And how do you want this phrased?
So the rolling language is, so basically, it's not here, but you want to say, you know, support the exploration and potential implementation of the dog park. But there's also a piece of land which needs a you know, and to authorize the town to keep map lot, we don't know map lot, on St. Johnsbury Road.
55, 7, and 8.
So you're going to come up with the wording.
Yeah.
So, but they, John?
Yeah, so can you name the top 3 benefits that come to the town from this?
I think it will enhance one of the awesome features of the town is Kilburn Craigs. I haven't been able to make it to any of the conservation committee meetings. they're gonna have their own concerns that we'll address in this project, but creating the parking, and just an added thing, it's a 3/4 mile trail up and down. Doesn't take all day, but if you put something at the bottom where you can spend a half a day as a family, we do disc golf, that might even generate some money by putting out.
That's really where I'm going. Is there any money that comes to the town, or at least the businesses in town, when you do?
And so the other, there's one of the things that, especially one of the managers of Hampton Inn, I believe, around New England, they have disc golf tournaments. And so they'll have a weekend, we'll have, I don't know, 3 people or whatever that brings them in. If someone has a dog and we can advertise, hey, bring your dog, stay at a hotel, go there. We've got a nice picnic spot for you. By adding those different things in, we can add it to the marketing of the town and help some.
And just also, so in addition, we have a lot of apartment dwellers, and they don't have a location to go run their dogs or play with them. And so we were ending up, Chris will remember this, it was a bit of a dog poop crisis on the fields. So kids are out there diving for a ball and it was weird.
And our health inspector has closed it down until.
I didn't know we had 1,500 dogs in Littleton. That's pretty, that's a lot.
All right, so, I don't know how it's gonna be written, but and we have a motion,
To support the general theme.
the general, a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
You got no choice, huh?
Yeah, I'm in.
That was fun. Anything else from you, Chris, today?
Yeah. Do you want a pool?
Oh,
The pool.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know exactly, I've been out of the loop for about a month. I don't know how it's currently worded, but we're having issues with the pool.
We haven't got anything on here for the pool at this time.
Is that number 27 there?
It would be really difficult.
It could be. That's why I left something open.
So basically, the pool, kind of like you talked about at the transfer station, the pool is actually part of a larger project for Granite Park. The pool itself has been costing, it'll cost us next year probably 12 to 25 grand, which takes.
So the pool needs to be painted again. We've been doing that every 2 years. We did it the first year I was open. We would have had to do it this year. That process is about 12 grand to paint the pool alone. Every year we have some mortar work to do because the old concrete falls out from frost damage or whatever from under where the skimmers are in the pool. So that's not a huge amount of money. That'll be probably $1,200 to $1,500 to put the mortar in. And then it's always a crapshoot with the plumbing underneath. For the last few years, we've been losing about minimum ½ inch of water a day out of the pool. We're constantly refilling the pool. That puts a drain on our chemical usage and water as well. Those are infrastructure pieces that are going to have to be addressed. Before, my position before I came to the town of Littleton was an aquatics director. And those were indoor pools and they were a pain to maintain. But you have a pool that is outdoor in New England. With old construction, there are going to be issues. So,
Yeah, we did some work on the pump a few years back just to keep it going, and
Yes.
actually the sweeper truck helped us.
just like the sweeper truck, we can probably get it limping along again for the next couple of years. Something is going to have to be done. In talking with Brian Lyman, who was park superintendent, I don't know how long ago, a long time ago, there used to be some drains in the bottom of the pool, or some returns that put water up. I don't know if anyone remembers the pool. They're no longer there. They've been covered over at some point in the past. And I believe that some of the leaks are coming from the pipes under there, because you have a lot of pressure going there, and our only returns are now through the side of the pool. We don't know where we're losing water. We can't figure it out. We don't know where the water's going. That's one of my concerns. But just the amount of energy that it takes to maintain the chemicals and everything is becoming unsustainable. Can we do it for the next couple of years? Maybe. But especially with the painting, 12 grand every other year is a huge chunk of change, especially for a pool that by itself loses money. Luckily, through our summer program, because we do lessons for the kids, that's an added cost. You know, it's a built-in cost for that program. You know, in our overall budget, it makes it up. But if we end up, if we can invest in something better, bigger and better, you know, we can kind of change the dynamic of the pool. One of the preliminary quotes that I got, you know, verbally, was around $400,000 for a rectangular pool. And the reason I went rectangular instead of L-shaped is for lifeguarding purposes. Because if you have more than 5 people in the pool and they're in different areas, you now have to have 2 guards because of the L. You need to maintain visibility on every person in the pool. If you have a rectangular pool, it saves some of the staffing there. But it would also allow us to, it would give us some more space, and I would like to put in a splash pad, roughly 40 by 40, with the mushrooms, the fountains, you know, kind of a pain to maintain on its own as well, just because of the small amount of water. But by adding an attraction like that, I think we can really change the revenues of the pool and bring in people from different areas and other groups that, you know, instead of going to rivers and streams, yeah, come to the splash pad, you know, takes less supervision and we can charge more for it.
So you're saying 400,000?
So 400,000 for the pool, you're talking another 200,000-ish for the splash pad, and then you can put the building in with all the pumps and everything. And if you're doing any kind of new pump infrastructure, I would estimate probably 200,000 there, minimum. My guess for the total project between 800,000 and $1 million for the whole project.
The reason, you know, we're really exploring doing something right now to be able to get the initial seed money, just like we've done with other projects. This isn't something that would be able to happen overnight, but we have a number of grant applications coming up. For example, the Land and Water Conservation Fund just let us know that instead of asking for 200, we can ask for $400,000 for this project. That's a fund that does one-to-one match. We'd be able to also go after like a Northern Borders regional fund, which I think are up to 250, which could then count towards federal match as well.
So the 400,000, would that be just 1 year, or would it be spread out over several years, or?
That's a good question. I think that what we want to do is just like with the Riverfront Commons project, where we can ask for flat $175,000, and then we leverage, use that to leverage the 1.5 million I think we're about up to now. We would do the same for the pool. So we probably be asking the voters for 200,000 is what I was estimating, and then be able to leverage that, hopefully not spend any of the money unless we were able to get the matching funding for the rest of the project.
200,000 is how much? It's 25 cents on the tax rate?
200,000.
27 cents?
About 27 cents, yes.
And by your new calculations, everything that we've passed so far tonight, and the operating budget, we haven't voted on it yet, we haven't voted on a lot of these things, but overall, we are, what, 78 cents less on the tax rate than last year?
Yeah.
Right?
And we actually, yeah, I was gonna say we're probably still right around the 78 cents.
78 cents.
We dropped the transfer station and increased,
A couple of things. Yeah. And the street sweeper, so we're still around that, so.
Question, so you get this started, and there again, in terms of scope of wording and whatever else, I mean, obviously the parks program has taken second fiddle, third, fourth, fifth fiddle for a long, long time, and certainly we're at a point where we need to reinvest, and I certainly would encourage Chris to think big picture. I'd still like to see some type of modified water park or whatever that I think that you could really get some increased attendance, and the hot water heater that you suggested I thought was very appropriate.
Solar hot water panels on the roof.
But anyway,
we're in.
But obviously we're talking the pool, whatever is going to go with the pool. We need at some point in time to address the green building. We need at some point in time to address some type of maybe multi-use / maintenance facility. can that all be funded, or at least the seed money? Can this seed money possibly feed all that?
So I would say you could use the seed money to start raising the rest of the funds for some of those bigger projects. Like, for example, the green building, that design is as it stands right now, is a full rec center. After the public input of what everybody wants, a couple of years ago, we had quite a few people come out multiple nights throughout the summer and really got a lot of public input. And we had to tone them down, which seems like usually they want to tone us down. But it was about a $7 million building. And I think that would probably have to be something separate, but thinking about it as, a future phase, with this area, it's really focusing on that upper hill area. And, I don't know if anybody hasn't been up there. No town that I'm aware of has views like Littleton at Granite Park. It's just an amazing place, and we don't take full advantage of it. There's a tree clearing a while back over and on, but if you're under that pool, I think it deserves a building to match the landscape and a pool to do it too. I mean, it's a premier location. It'll be a real jewel for the town. And if we can get it all done for $200,000, I mean, it's just
I'm just asking about it too, just saying, kind of roads or whatever, to make sure that the structure, that all of a sudden there's an opportunity that comes,
that's a good point.
that we can follow that out through the other boxes.
Okay, so it was what, 200 or 175?
200.
200. Want to make a motion, sir?
Sure.
Just around it.
Okay, warrant article 27 for pool seed money, I guess, is
To be
used to ultimately fund through grants and other sources and matching grants a new pool. And do you want to list out the component parts or that we envision, or just leave it at that with planning and
You say
funding?
pool and supporting facilities.
Supporting facilities and associated activities.
And facilities and associated activities. And we would have a estimated taxpayer impact of 27 cents per thousand.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Steve? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So we are now just 7 up, and we have a long ways to go. I don't know. So here's the deal. I don't know if we have any time this week. I have time this week, but I don't know if you have time this week. But I was also looking at January 4th. I think that's a Monday. But I wasn't sure if the select board had a meeting on the 4th, that we wanted to clarify that.
I will be at my other job.
Right.
I could drive after I'm done, but I'm not sure I need to go to the selectmen's meeting there. I believe I'm going to have to because it's the first meeting. So I would not be able to attend.
So, well, we have the 4th or the 5th, and maybe are you all available the 4th? seeing their proposed ballot and what the warrants are. We'll find out information on that.
Do you want to do some real quick ones? Like
Sure,
conservation?
yeah, let's go. Yeah, let's go.
Conservation Commission on this list is number 20. It's their unexpended Conservation Commission funds. I'm estimating high of $750,000. They haven't had a lot of activity this year. Excuse me, $750. It comes from their unexpended funds. So there's no tax impact to that.
And they want to use it for?
They just put it into their fund. At some point, they would maybe using it to purchase some land.
Okay. So this is one of these things that has to be on the ballot every year.
I move we support it.
Yeah.
Second.
Second, yeah. All in favor?
Aye.
5-0.
The next one is $1,000 for the Public Works Capital Reserve Fund. This again is just to start making it a warrant article that people see and to keep that placeholder going. I have on here that the 1,000 would come from the unexpended fund balance, small amount. It's just to keep this.
For the grant.
Yeah, for in case
yeah,
something comes up.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make a
Second
motion.
on that? Is there a second to the Public Works? John? Yeah. All in favor?
Aye.
Then we've got one similar for the fire department.
I make a motion that we add that to the warrant, $4,000.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Police Department?
This police department one is for $50,000. It doesn't come from fund balance. This is to start setting aside some money for the next purchase of the vehicles. So this is to put in capital reserves, and by the time the third year is up, you will have enough to buy the 3 vehicles. So you'll have the third year, will have the money within the budget, and a warrant will be written to draw off the $100,000.
So the third 50 would be in the budget.
Right.
2 years from now, and for 150, 100 being taken out of fund balance.
And so it doesn't hit all at once. This is one of those things that we've talked about doing.
So Dan, any second? Second? John? Okay. We'll pick on John for a while. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Then we have the police department unexpended and trust fund, and this is for the part-time training and the part-time staffing to build this fund, to continue building this fund. And the money comes from the leftover unexpended police department wage and salary line for both full-time and part-time. It's a small estimate of $4,000. We did this last year, so it basically comes from fund balance because that money falls to fund balance and then can be pulled back out.
And it has a cap of 10,000, right?
Yes.
Right.
10,000 per year, total of 50,000 in the whole fund.
Do you know how much we have?
Right now, I think we're at 8,000. So this would be 12 if it was approved.
Motion?
I make a motion that we add that to the warrant.
Second?
Yeah.
John Goodrich? All in favor?
Aye.
One more simple one, I believe it's simple, is the number 18, the special town meeting, because we're asking for a change in the collective bargaining agreement for the mechanic. We also need to have that special town meeting approval in case we need to come back and talk about it.
Okay, a motion?
Make a motion that we add that option to the warrant.
And second? So a second on that?
Second.
Steve? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I think that takes care of the really easy ones. parking meter heads, originally we planned on, well, we originally planned on 98,000. It was going to be a lease agreement, lease with a non-appropriation clause, but we could do this as a lease and have the money come from the parking meter fund.
How much would come from the parking?
25,000 a year.
For 4 years.
For 4 years. It will pretty much take anything that we might have in there over the next couple of years, but we also have budgeted every year now 20,000 for improvements in the parking meter budget. So if we needed to, we'd have that 20,000 that could be used in the parking meter budget and the rest from the fund balance, which if this change in the parking meters gets approved, the selectmen have the authority to draw it from.
Okay, so the parking meter, so it's an improvement. I think there were a few questions about how much was going to come from the parking meter fund, and will this offset any future expenses in some way? Or we will still have a parking meter person, right?
Yes.
Okay. So is there any offset to expenses in any way?
I don't know if it will offset expenses. What it is it's a technology's changed with the meters. More and more people are demanding the ability to use their smartphones, use debit cards, and other devices to pay for their meter time. And this gives us the ability to do that. And also, these smart meters, when somebody pulls away from a meter, it zeroes it out. So there should be a modest increase of revenue because of that. Which really, the big picture here is we want people to come here, we want it to be complete convenience for them when they show up.
It is convenient for me to slide into a parking.
Sorry about that. We're also integrating a new park mobile system with this. So we will be, this system, we're able to track vehicles remotely. It's not Big Brother, but we'll know when somebody's on site, and the parking meter people will be able to say, well, that vehicle's been parked there from this time to this time, and they paid for this much time, without adding infrastructure. And so we're kind of combining the two of them. Park Mobile is going to be, let's say, in the area of Saranac Street. We might not want to put up meter poles, but we can integrate Park Mobile with this particular parking system, so we can have a little bit of both in our community. We can work on permitting parking a lot easier. So there is an efficiency tool that goes with this. Are you going to see an excessive amount of cost savings? I don't think so. I think it's going to be business as usual. Our parking meter time, still the parking meter person is still going to be out there doing enforcement. Will it make things easier and more efficient for him? Absolutely.
Is there any market for the old pins, or resell them, or are they just scrapped?
They didn't offer that, just like the last time. They didn't offer the exchange program. The good thing in that would be the McKinney meter, the heads, the metal head will be interchangeable. So we still would be using those. But it's the drops that go inside. We currently use McKinney meters. We would be looking to sell those.
There might be a little bit of...
We might.
But don't have.
But remember, that technology was purchased around 2008, 2009, and back then it was around $88,000, $89,000 for what we have out there. We're going to be matching that. We have about 111 meters.
Can those parking meters be used?
What's that?
Can those parking meters that you might have left be able to be used somewhere else if you decided to expand parking?
We don't want to mix systems. It would make it extremely hard. Good question. Make it extremely hard for the meter person. They have to be carrying 2 or 3 different devices on them to figure out which meter head goes with which device and monitoring system. And for the administration of it as well, our administrator and the police department.
Maintenance.
Maintenance.
Anything that has
technology associated with it? There's always,
So I don't think maintenance is gonna be an issue more than what we have already. The systems that we have in there are already certified, they take the cold weather, these take the cold weather. There's no moving parts, it's all digital. So even the coin slots, it's all digital.
and it can't be hacked.
What's that? Well, that's a good question too. So, some people say, why don't we have a Wi-Fi infrastructure? A Wi-Fi infrastructure for meters can be hacked. It's a security issue, so these are actually cell systems. Each meter has a cell transmitter. And that's so, when you pay with a debit card, it can't be hacked.
And so the transmitter and everything else, will there be a cost to that? I mean, I don't understand technology, but I know that somewhere there's a cloud that we have to pay for, or something.
It's all
What
within-
else do we have to pay for on this?
What's that?
What else would we have to pay for?
That's all within the cost that we have here. Next year, there'll be, I believe there's a $4,000 annual fee that goes with the meter things. Now, to put that in perspective, the two signs that we have down on Union Street, each that have the radar, those signs are $1,500 a piece just to have a cell modem in those. We discontinued it because we can drive up with Bluetooth and pick up what we need to do if we want to change the sign. But these do require a cell signal, so there's a percentage of the funds we go to maintain that, which we have in our budget already.
So Chief, will it also have the option for coins?
Yes. And I'll have a bunch of options. Park Mobile is really good because Park Mobile's in Boston, it's in Burlington, it's in Manchester. So when somebody's traveling to New York, when somebody's traveling to the area, they have that on their app on their phone, what they're used to doing. So as they travel into Littleton, it pops up. Not only is Park Mobile available, but we can go to these spots that are free. I mean, they're open, they're not free. They're open. And so it's a convenience issue to attract people here as well. But it's a lot more convenient for parking enforcement because the current system, it's pretty old now. I don't have any problems with it.
Okay. So
This is project for the future or no?
Future being 2021.
2021? You guys are thinking about because it's very expensive.
With the prepaid $10 on it, will those work anymore or no?
The park card system, it will have a similar park card system. We probably would offer an exchange program. I'm not 100% on how that's going to work, but we won't leave people high and dry to their current park card.
a motion?
I make a motion that we accept warrant article 19 to replace and upgrade the parking meter kits for $25,000 with offsetting funds.
Offsetting funds?
From the parking meter.
Fund. Second? All in favor?
I just can't support this.
Okay, well, tell us why.
I'm just not on board, I guess is the easiest way to say it. And I don't want to, I appreciate you guys in the police force immensely. But you know, when I go into Hanover, I hate it. I absolutely hate it. You pay for everything you do there, and there's no escape from anything. If you want to park anywhere, like you do and all that. And we're mostly comparing to the big cities, much bigger than we are. Burlington, Manchester, Boston. Those are the ones you name.
I'd like to respond to that. So first of all, the big cities are the people that have Park Mobile, which is a system that integrates with this. What we're doing on a day-to-day basis, the police department, is we are enforcing a warrant article that was passed in 1947. And it's our responsibility to do that efficiently and to the best of our ability. And part of that is service to the community and people that come here. If you oppose parking and parking meters, that's a different issue. The parking, paying for parking, that's a whole different issue. What we have to do for work is have infrastructure that works for us and works for our citizens. That's what this is. If you're opposing the parking meter system, that's, in my opinion, a little bit different. That would be a different warrant article or discontinuing parking enforcement altogether. But, and we can talk about that too.
Well, I see your
There's a
point.
reason why they have parking enforcement.
Yeah, I see your point.
Yeah, but we're not getting to the point. If somebody elects to pull in front of the post office, not put any money in, run back out in 3 minutes, and we don't notice,
Yeah.
there's no harm, no foul, no fine, right? I mean, we're not gonna get to the point, and I think that's where you're heading, John, is that you took that upon yourself, you knew that you were beating the town out of 12 cents, but you did it, and you figured it was in your tax bill, or whatever you figured it was in.
Jesus, bro, you got me, Steve.
Well, it's the same thought I got, John, when I do it. And that, I mean, the same thought process is the towns that give out speeding tickets just by taking camera pictures and sending people a ticket. I mean, I don't know what I got when coming back from church in Upper Marlboro, Maryland, and she was missed. You know, I was this Florida, but anyway, but yes, I'm not, even though I know it's wrong, so to speak, in being a system, I'm not in favor of getting to the point where Big Brother knows exactly what you're doing and you can get fined even without anybody being there to get you.
That's not what this system does.
Did I phrase that well, John?
You did it, good job.
We don't have that capability.
And I don't want us to.
We won't have it.
I got one question.
Yes.
Down by the beach, they have one meter set up in the center of the block. And you go in, you get your ticket, you stick it on your windshield.
Right.
And whenever you leave, that spot is available, but even though you've got an hour left on it. And that seems like it'd be less maintenance, less work for the officer to go collect the money. It's just one thing.
Right.
Stand in the center. Is that the same as this, or is it?
You're talking about a kiosk system?
Yeah.
They're extremely expensive. And we have to think about who we're servicing here. We have a senior population that, if it's 15 degrees out, has to walk down the sidewalk, pay for their parking, go back, and stick that in the window. There is a good place for a kiosk, and by the way, they're around $15,000 to $20,000 a piece.
Oh, for each one in the center, and you're doing the whole town for 25.
That's right.
Times 4 years.
Times 4. For
Times
100 grand.
For 4 years.
So, just for the, I guess for the elderly population, it does make sense to not have them walk
Thank
out.
you. He looked at me.
No, I was looking at you. You're still young.
The good about the kiosks, though, given our town size, you only need 2 of them. One
That's what I
each
mean.
side.
It'd be like 5 of them versus 25 heads or whatever. But yeah, you already looked into it. So.
I'm in favor just because it still takes quarters. That will be me. So, okay, we have a motion, we have a second, anywhere?
I'll second it.
Second, Shane, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Well, what warrant articles is this?
That it is the parking meter, let's see which,
20.
19? And how much did the chief ask for? 25,000?
I'm sorry.
How much did the chief ask for? 25,000?
25,000 times 4 years.
For a year?
4
Per
years.
year,
Or for 4 years? That's limits 100,000.
yes.
So I want you to know, I didn't vote against it, but I abstained.
Oh, okay, 4-1, okay, I'm sorry.
4-0.
4-0-1,
And just, real quick, the select board created a parking commission, I think it planned 2 years ago, and they did a pretty in-depth study. We got a grant from the Federal Highway and produced a pretty good planning document. I think we have it up on the website.
Maybe I'll take a look.
Yeah, if you can, definitely take a look at it, because it actually addresses.
That's a good idea.
That's what you guys are talking about.
And I don't need to go longer, but I want to make sure we go over what's left. Not that we're going over each individual one, but I want to make sure that you and I and everyone is on the same page.
okay.
So we got 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 is a big question. There might be 11 that also goes along with that. So I'll have to adjust my numbers. We have number 12, I'm waiting for an answer from DRA. 21, which is infrastructure road work, 28, which is social services, and we may have some petitions coming in, but at this point, we'll lump them all together. And then we have 30 because they said they were going to bring in a petition. If they don't, they'll become part of number 28.
So we are still less than last year. We're about 50 cents less. Okay.
And that would be on the proposed.
Right.
On the default will be about